To order, please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Stand. Okay, first item on our agenda, first of all, I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening and those watching on cable. The first item on our agenda is meet with the Water Commission. Mr. Frisco.
Yes, I thought this was a good time in our schedule to re-energize the Water Commission, because we have a lot on our plate. We do have setting the water rates here in the near future, and we just have a lot of action items that fall under their scope. So tonight I asked Dick and Paul Brickman from Wright Pierce, who's one of his consultants, along with the Water Commission members. I did receive a call later this afternoon. Vin Rigucci, the chairman, he came down ill, so unfortunately he won't be able to make it, but he's home listening, so hope you feel better. But I just wanted to sort of run through quickly just a top level what we'd like to discuss tonight with everybody on the board. One is introduce the members of the Water Commission that are here tonight. We need a few more members. So if the public's listening, we can get something again in the transcript. This is one area we need more public participation. So if anyone has a friend that's interested at all, please pass them this way, send them over to the town clerk's office, or go online and sign up for the Water Commission.
So we're thirsting for help.
We are. We need two more people, would be ideal. Tonight, we're going to just talk quickly, just remind everybody, we have an Andover water contract, which has an expiration date. We don't want to lose sight of that. So with that said, we're going to talk about what happened at town meeting, and talk about the approvals that we had associated with the money we received at town meeting, and what now is taking place since those approvals. I asked Dick if you could just give us a brief update on the water meters that this board approved at our capital last year. I think it's a good time to get an update on that and where we're going with it as we come into the next round of capital. And we've also been having technical meetings with Reading. We've also been having with MWRA, and if you maybe could touch a little bit upon that so the public knows that what we're doing and the activities, and some of the Water Commission members that haven't been available or just joined, gives them an opportunity to also listen. And the last thing is, at the end of this conversation, I want us to be committed to doing some workshops in town when we find the time is right to do that. To give people in the public an opportunity to come out and listen to what we're doing in regards to this water, and make sure it's clear. Our steps right now from an approval or getting the EIR, am I saying it right?
DEIR.
DEIR, to get that done, we are including septic, wastewater in that approval process. But it's not with MWRA, it's just a process. For approval for what we're gonna spend our money is for water only with MWRA. I wanna be clear on that, and I'm hoping tonight after this meeting, it's clear, and any public members that are here can ask those questions to alleviate any of those concerns that I've heard rumbling around town, okay?
So before Dick, then why don't you introduce the water?
I'll let Mark, if you wouldn't mind, taking the opportunity, if you could maybe come up and, or have the members identify themselves, because I don't know them all.
Actually, I believe the only member of the Water Commission that's here tonight is James Perkins, who's with me tonight. As you mentioned, Mr. Rigucci was sick.
Are there only two members?
No, there's actually two other members as well. I'm sorry, one other member. So there's Mr. Rigucci, and then there's Stephen Coriali is a current member. And we have a gentleman who's taken out papers to be a member. I don't know that he had returned them. As of last week, he had not. His name is Alex Street.
He's been-
on Station Street.
He has been,
He did return.
yes. He's already been nominated, I believe, correct? He's been sworn in?
Okay.
He's been sworn in, so you have room for one more plus two associates.
Exactly. There's a total of 7 seats on the Water Commission, 2 being associate members. Currently, then, we would have 4 members. So we have 1 more full member and 2 associate members. We'd like to at least fill that one other seat. At
Yes.
minimum.
You would.
Thank you, Ron.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, to you? Okay. I just want to recommend that Mr. Vagucci go and get sworn in. He has not gotten himself sworn in at this time, and it'd be very important that he does that. So that needs to be done.
Okay.
I'll turn it over to Dick, and, yeah.
Good evening. I put together a brief overview of three things: the MWRA project, what we're doing, and what's been funded. I can speak to the water meter and our coordination with Reading. I'll start with the meters. We actually had a meeting today with the town administrator, myself, the finance director, and our consultants in Mark regarding options for the meter systems. For options to this metering system. We're looking at the options what is the best value for the town, which has the least administrator for some kind of a high-end system, has a lot of IT added work, so we're trying to optimize it, so we're just starting that process. That process will be, a metering system will change all the meters in all the homes in town. Some of the meters are in excess of 20 years old, and when meters get old, they tend to run slower, so it under-registers, so it doesn't give an accurate reading of what you're using for water. And there's several technologies to get that information from the meter back to us, and that's what we're looking at, those parts. That will be probably a 2-year process. Most likely we would procure the meters and the technology to get it from the meters to us, and then a separate bid out for the actual installation. We're looking at that starting
Bless you.
sometime first quarter next year.
Mr. Chairman.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah, you go, I'll go.
So Dick, there are a couple things I recall about the water meters, capital. Did the capital include installation
Yes, sir.
and the technology for connectivity?
Yes.
And when we talked with Reading, we talked about, you just mentioned you've had some communications with them, of seeing in fact if we could use the same system that they were using.
And currently, we use the same system they have, and I have a call into my counterpart to verify what are they doing. Are they going forward to some different technology?
I thought in the meeting we had, they said they were in a full technology system. Did you hear that, Michael?
If I recall from a previous meeting, that they've updated their technology, and I thought that the superintendent indicated that we've been updating meters.
Well,
new
the
with
meters
new
and the technology to get the information from the meters. I think they're up with the meters, I'm not positive the other part,
My
but I have a
understanding
call
was
into
they
them.
were reading the meters automatically without sending someone around.
But,
I may have.
I thought I heard that as well, but.
yeah, we're trying to confirm exactly what they have. So having some commonality, if we choose to maybe jointly read the meters or something like that, to the system, so it would make sense to examine that. I've just talked to Electric Light. They also have an automatic meter reading system. There could be some synergy there as well.
I actually thought we had already made the purchase for these meters, I guess. I misunderstood, because we approved this so long ago, and I thought we were going with the same system that
It's
Reading
this
had.
year's capital.
Yeah.
It's in this year's capital.
No, we approved it last year.
No, it was
July
July 1st.
7th. July
We
6th.
approved it
Yeah.
last year for
This fiscal year.
expenditure this year.
Yeah, sorry.
Right.
Okay, yes, July.
So to answer your question, that's what I'm trying to verify, what they have. It could be get the same thing they have. It could be maybe there's a little dating compared to what we're gonna do. So we'll kind of gather that information right now.
Don,
The Capital Improvement Planning Committee recommended this last year to the Selectmen. It was a fully automated system that would be remotely read. And that's what was proposed at town meeting and what was voted upon at town meeting, and for a total of, I believe, $1.7 million. So a good deal of the savings and lost water revenue going to take care of the debt service. So this, I thought this was already a big deal.
no, in our discussions with Reading on water, the conversation came up as to they were, at least I thought I heard them say they had a fully automated system. We suggested that we take a look at what they're doing. Maybe procure the same type of system. But that depended on, and I think Dick is alluding to it, is that he has to get together with them and have that conversation.
If that was the system that was recommended by the consultants, was a fully automated system last year.
Yes, but there's probably more than one brand of a fully
Probably is,
automated
I'm
system,
sure.
that's what I'm talking about.
So, but if, there isn't any need for compatibility with Reading. That's not the issue. It's just, they've already gone, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, it's just, if they've already gone down the route, we don't want to reinvent the wheel and see
Well,
see how it's working for
there
them.
could be a potential compatibility.
Well, that was our intent when we were
Yeah,
having
but
this
I don't
discussion.
understand the need for compatibility. I mean, the MWRA is going to be billing us. I know the water's coming through Reading, but we're not
There's
purchasing.
opportunities that need to be looked at associated with management of the water. Just leaving options open, that's all.
Yeah, okay, I just didn't understand where it was going or why. Okay.
So what's the timeline, you think, roughly?
It's around 18 months.
18 months? Thank you.
That's for full implementation, but as far as going out to bid and picking the system this spring,
Probably in the spring, winter and spring.
You want Dick to
Any
continue?
further questions?
Yeah.
Dick,
Did I answer that question?
I'm sorry, did
but
you want to continue? That microphone is for the cable, it's not for the room.
Oh.
Yeah, it's for the folks to
Poor
listen.
guy over there, every time you bang it,
Oh,
it's...
sorry. My bad.
No, we've all done it, trust me.
Yeah. And as for the second thing you asked, Mike, meetings with Reading, we're setting up another meeting with Reading. We met, the engineers met, and myself, about a month ago, to go over what specific pipes have to be upgraded to what size. The next level was to get the town administrators involved and work out the mechanics of how we're gonna do this. Who's gonna pay for it, when do we pay for it, how do we structure this into an municipal agreement? So we're kind of starting that process. So we're meeting in probably about 2 weeks, trying to set up a meeting with the local.
Yes, Mike?
And we're also looking at opportunities where we could maybe get some, seek some financial assistance through some of the programs that exist out there too, as we're going through the same process. But we need the information to be a little further along before we can submit to MassWorks or someone like that. So I just want the public to know that, and obviously the board members, we've already discussed it. We are committed to do that, and we may need some assistance from the Water Commission to help us if we need to put some information together on these requests, reports that we have to submit. There's going to be an effort, and I think some of them obviously may fall on you, Paul. But we should be very energized to do that. It's important.
And some of the logistics of, initial blush, the town of Reading wants to pay for all the repairs. We haven't worked out the mechanism how we would pay them. So that would affect how we would apply for a grant or something. Who would actually be doing it? Would it be a joint application? We have to kind of figure out how we want to approach it. So that's an ongoing thing. We're hoping, we are shooting to have an IMA for both communities to approve in the spring. With a municipal agreement for water supply, which would cover any construction costs within the town of Reading we need to do, any kind of wheeling charge or administrative charges. So we have a full exposure of what we're talking about for how long.
And Reading's been great, I will say, at least, I mean, through some of the meetings we've been in, but I think you've had the same experience. They've been very helpful and willing to work with us, so.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the entire timeline? What's an update on that?
And that's, I gave you a graphic. Can't see off at home. This is a rough timeline over the next 4 fiscal years, starting this year. Basically, it's the major tasks, what they are, how much is it costing, and what was the funding source. And what you see in yellow is projects that have already been funded through either capital improvement or last fall's town meeting. The green, that would be projects we're submitting for capital project funding for FY17. It's mostly design type projects, and the ones that are not highlighted, that's the construction. That would be FY18. And again, the design and construction, if Reading wants to do it, we pay them back, we need the mechanism to, so it could be these costs are shifted out. So they do it, we pay them back, we'll pay them back going forward as part of the IMA, so that the need for us to do it at this time frame. Construction will probably happen in this time frame, but who actually does it might be different.
So, are you saying that all the items shown here in green are what?
To be
we
submitted for
plan on
FY
putting in
For FY '17.
FY '17 budget?
Right.
And the remaining items,
The ones in white are not highlighted, that's the actual construction, that would be FY '18.
would be FY '18?
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah, so the green would be for our June town meeting.
All right.
correct. And timelines, we're right now in the permitting process, going on top of the DEIR's draft environmental impact report. We need to get that done, that's our baseline. Once that's done, we can get our comments from the various state agencies, and we can start the final environmental impact report. And that's our document, tells us what we have to do, what our standards are, what our rules are, what we have to do, and what we don't have to do. So once we have that, there's 2 permits we need to get. It's an Interbasin Transfer Act. We're transferring water from the MWRA to us, which is one permit, and there's an application to us to apply to be a member of MWRA. A lot of the information in the DEIR goes into those applications.
Paul, you know, the board's plan, when we put together a cost plan last year, and we looked at the water rate increases per year to fund it in a worst-case scenario.
Yep.
And the worst-case scenario was we didn't get any help from the state, whether it be in terms of paying for part of it or 0% loans and everything. We just ran it all as if we're covering the whole thing. And the process in the pursuit of grants, et cetera, based on what I'm hearing regarding Reading wanting to just pay for it and bill us, our estimation, would that be
I'd have to.
put us on a negative side?
Well, no, I'd have to talk it through with a couple of folks, because there may be benefits, as I'm sitting here thinking of, you know, the MWR may be more willing to assist potentially in some of the program if they were, because they would be an existing member, so there might be a way to leverage some money through that way. But I'm just thinking off the top of my head. We'd certainly want to have more discussion with them as to how they see it being implemented, so that we would know what the financial change would be to us, because we did it just kind of normal, ordinary financing.
Right.
With the charges in that manner, whether or not it would be a negative.
Mr. Perkins has his hand up.
Steve, did you have your hand up?
That's it.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes, I'd like to get a copy of those documents.
Oh.
Thank you.
No, and I think that's is something we have to vet through a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because the other thing as well is, because this is new construction for us, this is a new infrastructure project, I think we would be eligible for more grants than Reading would if Reading, I think, took it under. I'm not sure. I like to look at that to make sure
Yes.
that we
No,
don't lose out on an
I
opportunity.
think we have to look at the categories and how they fall.
I mean,
I agree.
I appreciate them willing to step up, but I think it's definitely something we have to make sure we don't lose out on an opportunity to get some extra funding here, assistance.
Anybody on the board have any questions?
Is that
Mr. Gilberto?
all you had on your review?
Comments?
So if there's any questions. I mean, all the money we just got.
Anyone in the audience have any questions? Mr. Perkins?
I'm curious about the water that we have available to us. I'm thinking of, gray water that would come from the vast amount of parking spaces that we have at the various shopping centers and shopping malls. And I wonder if that has been considered in our usage of water, of reclaiming that. And it may be a lot less expensive than running a pipeline all the way across Reading. And it may be more readily available to us if we pursue that option.
You don't want to take that?
I'm not technically smart enough to go.
I could offer a little bit of discussion about it. We did look at, through the DEIR process, and talk a little bit about what that report is about. Basically, we're looking at projects in order to provide the town with water supply, stable, consistent, high-quality water, and I look at the need for wastewater and disposal options for wastewater in town. So we looked at them from a very high level, and we're getting close to the end of that study. When we looked at local sources of water, the quality of those sources are very hard, and the quantity isn't there in order to have enough water to provide the whole town with water. So looking at a runoff, which you can get a lot of water all at once, but then you don't have any water for 7 days. So how do you capture that? What kind of storage volume? You have to have a very large storage volume and a lot of that surface, and then be able to treat that to a high enough level to provide you with long, clean, good, clean water. It becomes very challenging. It's an idea that's actually followed in some places. They will look at a development and say, I can't draw on water from, because it's not available to me, so they'll build a building and they'll actually capture that water and treat it. It's very costly to do it on an individual basis. So,
Well, I know it is, I've investigated that.
okay,
And you can buy it for the individual home,
right.
but I was thinking that if we consolidate and maybe even do it over a period of years, we might be able to collect water from, like, Highway 28 runs right through where there's vast amounts of gray water that can come from the,
If you looked at the calculations and on a rain and whatnot, it probably isn't gonna get you anywhere near what you need. That's what we're doing now. So that's a challenge.
well, my question is, now, the water that you would be tapping into in WRA,
Yep.
that comes from the Quaven
Yes, it does.
reservoir. And to me, the population continues to grow. Has that been taken into consideration on how much water is going to be required?
Yes. We looked at, that was part of the study, was to look at population growth, and what your needs are in terms of water today, and ultimately, when you become grown, basically looking at all the places and saying they need water, the same, undeveloped, we looked at that. And the Quabbin Reservoir, the MWRA has a great amount of water there. They're allowed to use over 300 million gallons a day, and they're only using about 200 million gallons a day. So there's a lot of million gallons a day available, and the town of North Reading needs about 1.5 million. So there's plenty available.
Paul?
Yep.
We're going to move into our
Okay.
tax classification hearing. Mr. Perkins, if you have some more questions, maybe you can take it offline.
But this is very helpful, and Dick, if you wouldn't mind emailing this to Michael, and maybe you can load it up on Dropbox for us, it'd be nice to have this electronically. But the purpose, again, was to just bring us all back together. You can see the magnitude of effort we have ahead of us. We definitely need some more support from the community, so if there's anyone else, again, who wants to join the committee, they don't meet a lot, maybe 4 or 5 times a year, if that. We do have the, when are we setting the rates for the water again?
We typically like to do it around April. I think the charter says do it in the
We've been,
February timeframe?
I've been talking with Michael, and one of the things that we ran into with doing it late at the end of, close to the end of last fiscal year, was that we ended up with this issue of overlap into the following fiscal year when the bills came out. They were back charged into the
Yep.
last quarter.
That's why I asked.
We're thinking it would be better to get that done sooner. Mr.
It was my intention, working with the DPW director and the water superintendent, was to look at that 6-week window when we're reviewing departmental budgets as a time to have the water rate here, which would put it at some time in the month of March or early April.
Okay, at this point.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. You're welcome. to
Appreciate
stay.
taking the time.
Ms. Manapelli, do you have a motion to open the, not a motion,
Yeah, it's right in the.
public hearing?
Hi, Liz.
Why can't I find it, Michael?
It's in the packet.
It's separate? I'm talking about the PowerPoint.
No, I'm talking about the public hearing notice.
Yeah, I'm looking for
It's right in front,
it. All right, let me-
Really? 'Cause I have
The
about
front of what?
17
right here. It's on,
Oh.
it is on page,
Okay.
Did you
I don't
want me to
believe
I
read
must have went right.
page 14.
No.
There you go.
Want me to read it?
this?
No.
I have
Yeah,
all-
okay.
Thank you, yeah. All right.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So I'll read the notice of the public hearing. The Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Monday, November 16, 2015, at 7:30 PM in North Reading Town Hall, 235 North Street, room 14, to determine the percentage of the local tax levy to be borne by each class of real and personal property for fiscal year 2015 in accordance with the provisions of MGL Chapter 40, Section 56. Interested taxpayers are encouraged to present oral testimony at this hearing or may submit information on their views in writing to the Board of Selectmen office, either to the above address or via email at townadministrator@northreading.gov, no later than 12 noon on November 12, 2015, signed by myself, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen. Mr. Gilberto, did you get any comments in writing?
None that have been reported to me.
We have our assessor here. You're running.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, just before we proceed, in years past, I've actually recused myself from any for participation in discussion on the matter because I have a family member who owns commercial real estate property. Sought an updated, requested an updated interpretation as to my ability to participate as a member of the board. So long as the recommendation before this board is for a single tax rate, which is what is being proposed by the Board of Assessors for the board at this particular meeting, my brother's interest would be the same as everybody else's, and therefore I will be able to participate. So therefore, I intend on participating this evening. Thank you.
Mr. O'Leary?
Good evening. Thank you for holding the tax classification hearing for 2016. I just want to go over a few things for the office and an update on how we've gotten to the point we are today. First of all, I'd like to thank my office staff, Debbie Clothier and Sherry Greer, and the board. We've worked very diligently to get our value certified by September 13th this year. I'd also like to thank Liz for the hard work in getting the presentation all put together. With that being said, we're going to go through the slides for what tax classification is and the roles in which it plays. The first one is roles and responsibilities, understanding the levy, classification considerations. The Selectmen's role under Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 56, the Selectmen shall annually first determine the percentage of the local tax levy to be borne by each class of real property. In determining such percentages, the Selectmen shall adopt a residential factor. The assessor's role under Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 2A, the assessors of each city and town shall determine the fair cash valuation of such real property for the purpose of taxation. Classification of real property shall not be implemented in any city or town until the Commissioner of Revenue has certified in writing to the assessors that the assessments on the real property that they propose to make are at full and fair cash valuation. How is the levy calculated? The total assessed value divided by 1,000 times the rate equals the total property tax revenue, or the levy. Understanding the levy. Proposition 2.5 restricts the growth in the levy, not the rate. Budget process involves the levy limit plus 2.5% and new growth. As a result, budgets in Massachusetts are revenue-driven. Determination of assessed value is a process separate from setting the levy. North Reading's levy profile today. The residential class bears 87.4% of the total valuation. Commercial, industrial, and personal property, or otherwise known as CIP, makes up 12.6%. Residential and CIP taxed at the same rate for FY15, the rate was $16.62. The levy for fiscal year 2015 was $44,382,164.61. The total levy proposed for FY16 is $45,817,464.22. Based on uncertified tax rate of 1641. That's what we're proposing. What is a split, or sometimes called a dual tax rate? Communities decide to tax residential, commercial, industrial, and personal property differently. Statute allows an increase in CIP share of the tax levy up to 50% higher than the residential. It does not generate new revenue. It reallocates the levy burden. Tax rate split for prior years in the town of North Reading have been noted for 1985 and 1988. Chapter 200 of the Acts of 1988. Once the property classes have been classified by the Department of Revenue, there must be a public hearing at which the assessors present the information to the Board of Selectmen, who vote to establish a split tax rate or a single tax rate by adopting a factor of 1. The adoption of different tax rates does not change the property tax levy. Rather, it determines the share of the total levy to be borne by each class. The share of the levy raised by the CIP may be increased by 50% as long as the residential and open space raises at least 65% of what they would have been raised without the 50% shift. Commercial property valuations. The appraisal process involves the assembly, analysis, and classification of various types of information into a value estimate. 3 approaches traditionally used to value property are the cost, market, and income. And I do want to take a little breath there and explain. The cost is what it would cost to build that structure today. The market is what people are purchasing the properties for. A retail space. What are they buying 1,600 square feet of retail store for? Income approach is what they're actually yielding in the rental rate. So those 3 approaches to value are mandated by the Department of Revenue to certify, and 3 approaches have to be within 15% of each other, each value. The assessor,
You elaborate on that. You can-
well, the assessor considers the amount of data collected, the strengths, the weaknesses, and the relevancy of each valuation approach. and determines an assessed value for each property. In Massachusetts, property must be assessed at full and fair cash value. The terms full and fair cash value, market value, 100% value, and fair market value are all essentially synonymous. The town of North Reading currently issues our tax bills to the commercial and industrial properties on our cost data, not the income and expense, with the exception of a single property that borders an abutting community. The Department of Revenue certification process is very straightforward in the methodologies used. The town must prove the three approaches to value: the cost, the income, and the market, with sufficient data to support the final values. The income and expense statistics. North Reading mailed out 287 income and expense reports. 176 income and expense reports were returned. North Reading assessed the penalty of $250 on 111 properties for a total of $27,750. The $250 penalty is the highest that the state or the Department of Revenue allows me to charge as a penalty. The 38D, otherwise known as the I&E, is used to develop the market rents, the expenses, and a vacancy rate, which will then be applied to all commercial and industrial properties. The income and expense reports are not tied to any individual property tax valuations. They are analyzed to determine the average market rental rates. The first process in determining your rent schedule data is by collecting the I&E 38D. The I&E data is then analyzed by the different commercial and industrial classes, otherwise known as use codes: retail, restaurant, so on and so forth, and their property locations. The I&E data must have a rent range in the rent schedules. The reason for this is due to location, building, and use. An example would be Main Street could yield $20 per square foot, where Park Street may only yield $15 a square foot. If the community does not have enough data in the returns of the I&Es, returns the assessor will then check the local market in the abutting communities. There are also program resources such as LoopNet, CoStar, and MLS available to use. These resources are also a great tool to verify your I&E data return is within the market range. When the rent schedules are finalized, they are then applied to all properties of like kind. The properties that did not return their I&E paperwork is subject to the $250 penalty, but are still valued with the same rental data as all the commercial and industrial properties throughout the town. This methodology is done throughout the state of Massachusetts. This is a graph just showing since we have implemented the penalty. And in 2014, we had probably 64% return. 2015 kind of plateaued off right at 60. In 2016, we actually, God bless you, we actually did have 64%. So we're in a good return rate there is no community that ever receives 100% return.
Mr. Chairman, can I just,
Yes.
it's a segue, but I wanted to ask you a quick question on that. When you send out the penalty notice, does that prompt the business owner to send you back the report?
Traditionally, what we do is we send out 2 mailings, the initial and then a second reminder. By October, then we're applying those penalties into the data so that we can get them on the tax bill. It actually becomes a lien on their tax bill. That's how we can guarantee we're gonna get that money.
Do they give you the report back too, or do they just answer you the next time around? In other words, you're asking them
The
to,
next time around.
okay. I just was
Sometimes it's
curious
cheaper
about
to pay
that.
the $250 than give them the information.
Yeah.
The information can cost them a lot more
Of
taxes.
course, yeah, right. Well, he said, well,
Right.
Really,
It's true.
it's cheaper to pay the $250.
The rental rates and the methodology is applied whether they submit the INE or not.
we'll get to that.
It's
Thank you. I was just curious about that.
Okay, this is where the selectmen have to take their votes. The open space discount. During the state mandated classification hearing, the Board of Selectmen must vote on the following in order to establish a tax rate. Open space is land maintained in an open and natural condition which contributes significantly to the benefit and enjoyment of the public and which is not subject to a permanent conservation restriction. Held for production of income, taxable under the provisions of Chapter 61, 61A, or 61B. The Board of Selectmen may discount up to 25% of open space share of the taxes. The Board of Assessors has actually determined that North Reading does not have any classified open space. But legally, I still have to read all that, and you still have to vote on it.
Tough decision.
Excuse me. What is wetlands? How is that factored into the tax rate?
How does wetlands factor in as in open space? Right, it would be either just vacant land, or it could be farmland or something, but those are taxable.
just a matter for the audience, through the chair, and you need to talk through a microphone.
So ask to get recognized by the chair, and then if you wouldn't mind using the podium if he recognizes.
The next vote that the Board of Selectmen may adopt is an exemption up to 20% to shift the residential class tax burden from lower assessed value property that are the principal residence of a taxpayer to the higher assessed properties and to properties that are not the principal resident of the taxpayer. Now, I can tell you, this was really adopted for down the Cape, you know, for their summer homes. We don't really have that. Do we have higher and lower assessed values that you still have the option of taking that vote to? Yes, you do. And the savings is 20%. And there's a slide, a few slides down that gives you a justification of how it works. This residential exemption, you can see on the bottom that if you had no change in the shift, in the straight tax rate of the $16.41, where the tax amount is, if you do shift with the exemption, it would shift. The savings on the lower assessed is about $615.37. The residential class of property, we have an average single family house, average single family at 502, 195. That is up by 4% from last year. This is the residential exemption that actually comes right out of Gateway that's reported to the DOR once all our numbers are in there. The percentage of residential is 87.4%. The CIP makes up the 12.6%. And you can see that the shift, the maximum shift that you would be able to vote on would be 1.5. The small commercial exemption works much like your residential exemption. The Board of Selectmen may adopt an exemption up to 10% to shift the commercial class tax burden from eligible parcels to ineligible parcels. The eligible parcels must have a valuation of less than 1 million and be owned by a business that employs fewer than 10 employees, as certified from the Department of Workforce Development. The Division of Unemployment Assistance sends to the Board of Assessors the mechanics of this small commercial exemption that are similar to the residential exemption. I will tell you, we have 57 properties that this could apply to. Last year, we had 46. The classification. The Board of Selectmen may shift the town's tax burden from the residential class to the commercial, industrial, and personal property classes, as long as the shift does not exceed the minimum residential factor. The minimum residential factor is 87.4%. This means that no more than 12.5% of the residential class burden can be shifted to the commercial, industrial, and personal property classes. The following pages contain some information on the impact of any shift of the tax burden. The Board of Assessors is recommending a factor of 1 or a single tax rate for fiscal 2016. The valuation of class, just the piece of pie, the residential again is the 87.5. The commercial in red is 6.64. The industrial makes up 4.1, and the personal property is 1.85.
Deb, can I ask you a quick question on
Yeah,
that slide?
Mr. Prisco.
Sure.
Where does the agriculture fall into that?
I don't have those numbers off the top of my head. I can tell you, we had 8 properties that were agricultural. We actually just had 3 come off of the tax rolls this year and are being taxed for FY16 at full and fair cash value. That process for agricultural, they have an application process that is very stringent. It has to be in my office by October 1st for the preceding year in which the tax is to be applied. So I knew back a few months ago that this was not gonna stay on our rolls. So we're down to 3 agricultural properties.
So once they come off, don't they have to have all the back taxes as well?
The rollback taxes will apply if he changes his use. It's very strict in the guidelines. If he changes the use in that property, then yes, he is subject to what's called rollback taxes for 5 years. If he's to sell that property, then there's what's called a conveyance tax. And that conveyance tax is 10%. So am I watching it? Am I monitoring? Absolutely.
How many years do they have to be off from paying regular again?
If they are off of and paying full and fair cash value for 1 full tax year and maintain that use, then it said that they have paid, 5 years, I'm sorry, 5 years, that they have paid their full and fair cash value back to the
So for
town.
5 years. So if someone's anticipating a change in use 5 years from now, it may behoove them to pay the full fair value, and then there wouldn't be any
Impact,
impact. But it has to be 5 years.
yes. And I
Then the
will
town
get-
loses first right of refusal.
Correct.
During a conveyance.
Right.
That's, if it's within that first year.
Okay,
If it's
but in
within
years
that
4
first-
through 5, in the years 4 through 5, there's just a 10% conveyance penalty.
Or roll back if he changes his use,
Or-
but still owns.
But if he were to sell it in year 2 or 3,
Yep. Conveyance,
conveyance, but the town's ability to purchase has expired.
correct. Correct.
Gentleman in the back, name and address, and go to the podium there.
Hi, this is John Barrett, 2 Dogwood Lane. On the previous slide, you had a minimum share that you said we couldn't go below. Can you explain how that minimum share was derived?
The minimum share actually is, if we look at that 87.4%, that is what makes up the residential valuation. So how it's determined with your commercial, industrial, and personal property, making up only the 12.5%, there is the shift that the Board of Selectmen can make up to 1.5% only. And it's due to the percent share of the levy of the residential. So this is a scenario if we were to shift the rate. I've done this on 1.10%. I've done it in increments of 10, and we'll put that easier. And that will be, you can see the impact and the tax shift. I just want to go to my page, I'm sorry. I can't see that from here. I should have had this open.
Increase in the levy. Yeah, because, excuse me, last she's just said it to
I can read for you from here if you need me to. I don't mind. You want me to?
Could you, Mike?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind at all.
Go ahead.
So, 100%, no shift at all, 100% no shift. The rate is $16.41 for residential and then everyone else as well. If we have a 10% shift, the rate would go to $16.17 for residential and then go to $18.05 for CIP. If we had a 25% shift, the residential rate would go to $15.82 and the CIP would go to $20.51. If we had a 50% shift, the residential rate would go to $15.23 and the CIP would go to $24.62 per thousand, by the way.
Thank you for being honest.
No problem. Again, not raising an extra dollar, just shifting the burden from.
Just shifting the burden, that's all we're doing. In no way are we adding to the levy. We are only shifting the burden of the levy amongst the classes. On the next slide, we have, this is called the minimum residential
Got me on this
factor,
one.
which is what we were just, I know. And that again breaks down our 87% with the 1.5% shift to the CIP.
Sure.
It's very hard to read.
So greater than number
That's-
3, stop. You may shift only up to 150% to CIP, and number 2 remains MRF.
The minimum residential factor.
That's the highlighted area that you can't read, I just,
2.7.
So what this is saying, once all the data is put into Gateway, it's saying that the town's maximum shift to the CIP is only 1.5%. Now, if we were in a community that had a higher percentage in their levy of CIP, then their shift could actually go all the way to 200. But we are not there. Our piece of the pie for residential is 87.4%, which restricts us to the 1.5%. In conclusion, the options that are before us tonight, we must set a tax rate, mail tax bills before January 1st, and the options before the Board of Selectmen are to either retain a single rate in FY16 or take a vote to shift that rate up to the 1.5. Are there any questions?
I'd just like to comment, I think the presentation was very clear, and I take it from the lack of questions that you've answered most of them. Mrs. Hilbert.
Yeah, I'd be curious as to the $250 fines which become a lien. The lien's pretty useless to
We can't hear you.
Can you give her the microphone?
I'd be curious as to what percentage of the $250 fines you actually collect.
We collect them all because it's put right on their tax bill.
Right.
So by putting it right on their tax bill as a lien, when they pay their taxes, I'm gonna say 99% just for that reservation of 1%, but I do believe it's 100. We receive that entire revenue. And this year was 27,750. Last year was 28,250 maybe. I know. So we do actually collect them.
Mr. Prisco?
So I have 3, looks like. First one, you had mentioned empty properties, and during when you were talking about the CIP, and you had mentioned empty properties, and I think I heard you right. You said so they take an empty property, and it rolls into the overall commercial tax rate based on other structures that are full, and that's how you come up with a tax rate for that type of structure.
I didn't actually segregate occupied or unoccupied. What I was saying was the methodology, when the data is received through the income and expense process, that methodology is all analyzed and then applied to all properties.
So let me use an example. I've always been curious, that Stop and
Sure.
Shop building. It's been empty forever. So I assume
4
when it
years.
was filled and operating, it was at one value, and now that it's empty and not operating at all, is it at a different value or is it the same?
The value change, and yes, that does, it restricts us where it is unoccupied and has been unoccupied. What we actually do is we're applying a higher vacancy rate. For our retail, we have a high and a low rate where they should be depending on location. That Stop and Shop building has been vacant for 4 years. They are not collecting revenue on that, but I still have to apply the revenue stream due to mandate. So we put a higher vacancy because that's really the negative part of that building. It's not that somebody can't go in and operate it and run it. They can, but they haven't.
Okay. So it is determined that we get less revenue from that building now than when it was operating.
Yes, we do.
What gets confusing, Michael, because I spent part of the afternoon trying to get to grasp a hold of it. Of the 3 processes they use, which is a kind of a check and balance against the approach they take, is that every individual property doesn't get the same tax rate. You know, it's based on a bunch of parameters associated with the tax rate, similar to the homes, right? It's based on sales
Right.
for
Well, that's
home.
kind of my next question.
Yeah. And in the case of the commercial property, it's based on parameters that are related to commercial property. You know, the size of the building comes into play and a whole bunch of other things. And the DOR requires that of the three approaches, when they accumulate this information for an average, that they're within 15%. And when they are, right, then it's felt that the assessors have done an appropriate job of valuing the property.
At full and fair cash value.
So
Michael's got a,
yeah, two left. So my question kind of goes to the value. And so the new rate you're requesting is $16.41, I have that right?
Correct. That's the anticipated rate, yes.
And I had asked you in an email this week, and I know you didn't have a chance to pull it together, but when we set the tax rate last year, I wanted to know which property values, residential, between 300 and 500, how it was affected, how, you know, above 500 to maybe 600, how are they affected? Because I have to assume, based on the way you explain it, if I own a home that's $350,000, and most of the sales around town have been between 300 and 400, they're going to end up getting a larger percentage of that overall tax increase. Is that correct, the way you explained it?
How, the methodology in certifying residential value is really very straightforward. First of all, we take the entire town and we depict it by neighborhoods. And the reason we use a neighborhood methodology is because neighborhoods, and I'm just gonna name some, Little Meadow is not gonna yield the same sale, even if it's the same size house, as Central Street. So we have 9 neighborhoods in this town. So from the neighborhoods, I drive in what's called my land value. So I get my land value from my neighborhood codes. From that, to obtain the value of the building, that is what does it cost a colonial to be built today? Right down to a 2x4. Was a 2x4 $16.42?
So sales doesn't matter?
No, I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm getting there. So we first developed that cost value.
Yeah.
The market side of that, just like the CIP, I still have to have the multiple proof of how I've gotten to my values. So the market comes in next. So what people are purchasing property for, I back that number in to find out, okay, my number, my base rate, a colonial, $125 square foot, just throwing numbers out there, is right on the money. I talk to the builders to make sure that we're right on the money. So the market of what you're saying in areas of $300,000 homes, if I have that neighborhood of $300,000 and I have 5 sales in there that have driven that value up to $380,000, yes, that neighborhood's going up. Yes, it is. Does that impact them? The market is driven by the people. We're only executing what they're saying in saying the market is worth to them. Those sales are all validated. Those sales I inspect personally. I talk to these people. I ask them, why did you relocate within the town? Did you move from another town? Why did you move here? That information is my reason for understanding and knowing my data. If I don't ask the questions, I'm not gonna know why they paid $380,000 for the property. Does that answer that?
It does, because where the impact I see it is when somebody buys it for $380, turns around, puts a building permit in for a $100,000 improvement. Now that $380 becomes over $500. That affects it as well, right? It affects
Absolutely.
everybody in that category. And it just seems so unfair to those who live in those homes that can't afford to be in them as it is. And now they're getting double whacked because the percentage of sales around town happen to be in that category. It just doesn't seem right to me.
The building permit would be specific to the property. The market that was driven by the sale price of the 380,000
Yeah.
is market driven. But that building permit is solely on that property.
For that 1 year. The following year, it's
As
gonna be
growth,
different.
but it stays on there as full and fair cash value. If they put a second floor on, I'm gonna tax it
I've asked
every
enough
year.
questions, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, before I close the public hearing, anyone from the audience have questions? Again, name and address again.
John Brett, 2 Dogwood Lane. If I took notes correctly, I think you said that the tax levy and the recommendations that you make are revenue-driven. And I guess maybe this question would be posed to the committee or the selectmen, is how do you bridge the gap between a revenue-driven assessment of what the tax levy should be, what the rate should be, and getting to a number that's based on non-discretionary budget, plus some discretionary budget? So I guess what I'm getting at is I've been here 7 years, about 30% increase in my property taxes, and I don't see that. It seems like the valuation of the properties is what's driving the levies, but I'm not sure what the process is to go from the statement of a revenue-driven levy and a revenue-driven tax base to a non-discretionary budget, something that bridges that gap and maybe comes up with different numbers. I don't know how that process works.
Proposition 2.5 limits the increase in the levy by 2.5% per year. Plus whatever new growth. People build new homes, there's new businesses that come into town. That increases the total amount of the levy. That's the total amount that can be raised to run the community.
So that sets the
They're-
limits, but how does the consideration, is it just default to the limit and then go up from there, or?
Well, we basically are budgeting to the limit. If you want to go above the limit, there are several different types of override to do that, which takes both a town meeting vote and an override election. So, for example, the new high school is being funded above the levy limit. And it's a
That
debt.
probably explains part of it, yeah.
Right, so it's a debt override, subject to the financing of that amount of money for, I think it was 25 years. So when that debt is paid off, that override limit goes down. So your tax bill would go down associated with that portion that's paid above the levy limit.
Okay. Last question,
Now,
I guess.
there's also
Oh, go ahead.
levy limits, you could do a debt override for 1 year. You know, where you bump
Special
the tax rate up to
circumstance.
do something and it's paid for that year,
Right.
and you bring it back down again.
I think I get that part. I guess the last question I would pose is, I think you mentioned that you budget to the 2.5% limit. A commercial entity would not necessarily be able to do such a thing, where they would budget to expected sales and things like that and revenue. So what is the rationale for budgeting always to the 2.5% limit versus budgeting to the requirements of your non-discretionary budget plus rainy day funds or whatever?
There are more than just the levy limit in terms of total revenue that are applied to the budget. There's what we call local receipts. So the town collects a number of different kinds of local receipts. One of the larger one being automobile excise tax. And our approach to our local receipts has been to be extremely conservative with that number. So at the end of the fiscal year, there's a surplus amount of money. We've collected more than we've budgeted. The DOR certifies that number, and it becomes what we call free cash. Free cash, generally, we try to apply it to capital expenditures.
Has there ever been, has there ever been a
We spent a fair
consideration for
amount of it.
applying that to the levy requirements for next year?
Well, we could, if we could manage to open that gap and not use all of the levy, right? I think we would do that, but you'd have to sit through some of our budget processes and understand what we face annually. You know, we basically 2.5% increase annually plus new growth doesn't necessarily cover demands on our school department, for example, where their annual growth is in the 4.5%, and they represent a substantial portion of our budget. Then we have what we call fixed costs, which is what we take off the top before we consider our operating budgets. And in there is our employee benefits, which include health insurance. And, you know, that's been a struggle each year. We actually made out quite well last year. When, this current fiscal year, we're concerned about what's going to happen in fiscal 2017.
Can I ask John a question about? Could I ask
Yes.
John a question? So are you trying to lead us to where you want us to try to take a look at it where we level the tax rate so it's not continuing to increase? Is that what the basis of your questions are?
That's one of the bases of my questions, but the terminology that I hear does not seem to be, does not seem to be recognizing that the population in general is not experiencing this level of growth of income, especially over the last 10 years or so. And so the terms budgeting to the limit and budgeting to revenues, or determining the tax levy as a revenue-based discussion, or determining that our default is to budget to the new limit, seems to be a non-commercial way where businesses would go out of business across the country if they said, okay, we're just gonna go to we're gonna budget to this level based on what we're allowed to. So that 2.5% levy, and I understand, that there's non-discretionary budgets in there, fixed costs, as you say, but it just seems to me that in the economic conditions that we have, to say that that's our baseline budgeting methodology, is just a budget to the 2.5 and then go up from there. Where's the limit? Is it 5%? It's about 5% a year since I've lived here, 4 to 5% a year, and it depends on where you live. So is that 4 to 5% a year increase in my tax rate going to continue ad infinitum? And then that's just what I should expect?
Well, if we weren't building schools and doing some other major capital expenditures over the past few years, we did the fire station, we did the Batchelder School, those items are above the line, and that's reflected in your tax rate. If you subtracted all of that out, it wouldn't be 4 or 5%.
That average. Yeah, and I'm averaging, it's kind of a weird curve if you plot it out. And I've only been here 7 years, so I can't.
So we've really taken on this economic development issue. We've taken on serious because we know that's where the new growth needs to come from, sort of stabilize the tax rate. And try to find new growth where we can collect some new cash so we don't have to always do it on the backs of the taxpayers. That's what we're trying to establish.
Yeah, because even if you just do the 7-year, 10-year look ahead, I'm going to be at $23-25 a year in 4 or 5 years, and it just keeps going up from there. And it just seems like it's because we're budgeting to this limit, not looking at kind of where the non-discretionary budget goes. And if you, like you said, you had an overage and you figure out a way to spend it, well, how about trying to figure out a way to level the taxes a year or two in a row?
Well, the majority of our tax money goes to the schools, right?
I do.
Right. I don't know what the cost is to send a child to our school today. It used to be around 10,000. It's probably far more than that now. Maybe it's 11 or 12. So, that's a challenge. And then we have to run town government. So I definitely hear where you're coming from. But the new growth, our economic development gives us a shot at least. And that's what we're trying to invest a lot of time and energy in.
Mr. Chairman, just for informational purposes, about a third of our budget are those fixed costs, okay, which is debt service, debt service and employee benefits.
Yep.
Okay, about a third of it, so about $20 million out of a $62 million budget. Then as you take the rest of it and reallocate it, about close to 80% of that budget is salaries, as people, delivering services. basically a one-third, two-thirds, 66% of the remainder budget there, the school department, one-third general government. And we do
So-
look at delivery of services, and we've altered how we deliver services over the years in order to maintain a stable level of services delivered.
And I get that, I definitely get the school part. I guess I would
It's
say.
not just the school, I mean,
Yeah.
we're a community as a whole, I mean, I don't want to
guess
set
I would
it
s-
up, but it's.
I would say if the mentality could be applied that the level of growth in some of these fixed costs should maybe mirror what the going average is in the community, because it's, just seems like we're in for more and more and more every year. I mean,
But
it's
if
just.
you look at it, just
that's a
from just
perception
look at the
level.
healthcare costs, even in your own, I don't know who you work for or anything else, but I mean,
Oh,
I
it's-
know my cost for healthcare, has gone through the roof, and the benefits that I derive for it, in other words, my deductibles, co-pays, have,
Yeah,
in the last 5 to 7 years,
Yeah.
same thing. The cost has gone up and out-of-pocket goes up, so that's a double hit. And so the community here is the same way.
I thank you for your time, I just
Yeah.
wanted to kind of,
As
I heard a
Mike-
couple of phrases that
As
kind of
Michael
caught me.
Prisco said, that we've concluded that the only way out of this is to expand our commercial base. And we've taken some pretty aggressive steps now to do that. If you go into Wilmington, for example, they have a very large commercial base, therefore, the tax rate can be a lot lower.
Held at bay, I guess. Yep.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you
for
very
your
much.
input.
Mr. Chairman?
Anyone else before I close the public
Mr.
hearing?
Chairman?
Yes, ma'am. Name and address. Sorry you have to come up there, but it's the only way you can be heard on TV.
I understand.
She's used to it.
Hi, I'm Lisa Egan. I'm a resident of Reading, but I'm here because I'm the director of the Chamber of Commerce in Reading, in North Reading. And I just wanted to recommend to the selectmen to maintain the single tax rate. I know I'm working with the EDC and Danielle McKnight in town planning, and excited about all the economic development that I'm forecasting in North Reading. And I think having a single tax rate really helps stimulate commercial growth and will give you a bigger tax base, which will bring less of the burden onto the homeowners. I think that because we're only 13% residential in North Reading, it really puts an undue burden on the existing taxpayers, the existing commercial landowners and commercial property owners, because they do represent such a small portion. If their taxes go up because they're such a small piece, they'll go up by the thousands to save the average homeowner a couple $100, which is significant. I realize it's important. But I also know that most of their tenants are going to feel the effects of that. They often are in triple net leases. That's going to mean their rents are going to go up, which is going to mean less employees. They're going to hire less local people, and there's going to be a higher cost of goods to shop locally. And as a Chamber of Commerce, we want to stimulate economic growth and encourage people to shop local. And if people are saddled with these additional taxes, such a small group of commercial property owners, I think it's really going to trickle through and have a negative impact on the growth that I know is definitely desirable within the town. So I would just like to recommend the single tax rate. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Yule.
Yes, I do have a couple questions. And bear with me on this. I was working on this today, and I was a little confused by what I was reading because it was somewhat contradicting my tax bill, so I was a little confused on this, okay? What is the current rate this year?
1662.
It is 1662. So that is correct. And you're proposing, you're not recommending, but the number you have here,
Uncertified tax rate,
okay, is 1641?
correct.
So you don't need an abatement. I don't need an abatement, right. Okay, I was very, very confused by that, and it made me wonder whether the rate had gone up to 1805. So you're saying that we're having a reduction?
Yes. A reduction in the tax rate, that's correct.
Which is due to reduction in exempt debt that has, gone down, and also with the valuations being up.
Increase in the assessed
Right.
valuation.
Right, your
But it
property
also
value
has
went
to
up.
do with our exempt debt going down too.
Right, okay. All right, well, then I think that answers my questions.
Okay, at
I
this
just-
point, I
Where did the
will,
1805 come from?
Well, that was at the 110.
Yeah, he was looking at if we did a shift
Oh.
of
I did,
10%.
you did that, and when I saw that, I said, well, if this one's 1662, they never go down, so it must be 1805.
No,
Hence,
no,
that's why,
no.
that's why I called you today. I just needed a
I know, my
clarification on that.
apologies.
So, and it throws all my numbers out of whack, so, okay.
okay, at this point, I will close the public hearing, and
Where the information, but that was.
Ms. Manapelli, closing the public hearing. So, board discussion. Mr. O'Leary.
I just have some questions, the assessors, just in relation to the income and expense reports that are sent out. You have about almost 39, 40%, almost 40% of the people don't respond. You have 111 out of 287 did not respond, so that's 38, 39%.
46.
Whatever it is, it's like 38, 39% that didn't respond. Just, and I know as a result, you have to go and give it your best guess. And the best guess is based upon the responses that you get.
There is no guess.
I'm sorry, bad choice of words. But you use the data that you do receive to come up with an average for different sections of the community based upon the data you get, you do receive.
Correct.
All right. And then you spread it across the board, uniformly based upon 60% of the respondents.
Well, and you use some databases which you
And
presented tonight.
if I don't have enough,
Well, again, I don't know what
actually
enough
look at
is.
other resources.
Yeah, okay,
and-
I don't know what enough is, but what I'm getting to is, my concern is, I don't know who didn't respond, and what the impact of those non-responses would have if you did get those numbers. As I said before, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, it might be worth the $250 not to pay, not to give you the information, because it could skew the data and increase the valuation of the commercial properties in some respect. Because when you do an income approach, the income approach for commercial property that's operating is generally what drives the market value, right? So if you don't respond, it skews the data down. And to Mr. Prisco's point, in the Stop and Shop property, that one piece of property and the square footage there generally overinflates the vacancy rates, which are being applied across the board too. By the same token, Stop and Shop moved up the street 4 or 5 years ago, paying above market rates in order to limit competition in the community.
Correct.
Is that parcel of land that they are now occupying assessed at a higher rate because their income is greater?
Their income is part of that data that
Right,
is
but it's skewed,
analyzed.
and it's diluted. It's diluted because the other Stop and Shop building, they moved into a smaller place,
Correct.
smaller square footage, so we have a higher vacancy rate, which is a negative factor on the value. They're paying above market rate up there, and they're not being assessed appropriately because we're not doing it on an income approach. Now, you said that there was one property that's being done on an income approach.
Manual. I said manual approach.
It's
What-
just not being done
It's-
at cost. We have to manually calculate the valuation.
The building borders an abutting property, abutting town. So if the property is part in another town and part in our town, we can't assess them at 100%, and the other town assess them at 100%. So the two towns decide and figure out what percentage each town has for an allocation.
Mhm.
And there's no way you're ever going to get to an income valid number and/or cost. So that number is why I took it out of the scenario.
Which is one of the biggest taxpayers in the community, right?
No.
No?
I mean, he's up there. He's up there, but he's not all in North Reading. He's not all in the town. So with that, I do have to apply a percentage. We have residential homes that border other communities too, that we use the same methodology on. I may have 70% of the house, 30% of the land. So that land and building that borders the other community is applied to accordingly. But I do want to get back to the rental rates. Because the rental rates for just, let's use Stop and Shop. What a rental rate is yielding in the Northeast surrounding communities is what I'm gonna apply. Whether I received their data or I didn't receive their data, I have other resource tools that I use all the time. So that data, Market Basket, what does Market Basket pay? Their lease length also comes into play. It's applied very methodically across the town.
But what percentage of the 111 properties that didn't respond, of the 287, which is the commercial industrial, total commercial industrial base, the 111, what is their assessed valuation? I mean, they're 39% of the number, but are they 60% of the value? Because, again, that skews,
I would
it skews the
actually
data.
have to extract them out of the
But I think it's
total
important to
CIP.
understand it. If you're gonna use this as part of your formula, you need to know what the impact is going to be by the lack of response and the need to go out and get other outside data, which gets back to my original tongue-in-cheek comment of it might be cheaper to pay $250. Because, again, those 111 properties, 38% of the total number of properties, really may represent more than 50% of the assessed valuation of
But
that.
I think what we're losing sight of is their tax bill is not being issued on that income number. Their tax bill is being issued on a cost. What it would cost to build that building today, less the depreciation of it. So that's what
But
their
you're telling me
tax
they all have
bill
to be
is
within
being set.
15%. So if the average home is $500,000. And and again, I don't know what an average lot would be in the town of North Reading.
$378,
Not in my neighborhood.
not in all
No,
neighborhoods.
in an average home, $500,000, it's not $378 for land.
Right.
It's maybe $150,000 to $200,000, right? $200,000.
Neighborhood driven, again, neighborhood driven.
But again, if it's $500,000 on the average, you've got $200,000, and if it's $125 a square foot, you're gonna build a 1,700 or 1,500 square foot home, which is gonna be an average home, do the numbers. You're not within 15% of $500,000. And again, when you take all three factors, and I'm more concerned with the commercial industrial base. I find it hard to believe from an income approach, because, again, I'm a bank examiner, so I get to see commercial industrial loans all the time on properties. And I see, what these properties are selling for. I see what the income is, what the net income is, what the income and expenses are, which again creates a value. And I look at the appraisals all the time. And again, the cost value versus the income approach is not within 15% in a regular appraisal.
They have to be, or we wouldn't have certified valuations.
No, maybe here, but I'm just saying, in the real world, that's not what's happening. I mean, there are people we have properties here in the town of North Reading that have mortgages on them at $3.5, $4 million and are assessed for far less than that.
But on commercial.
But it's based upon income.
But on the commercial and industrial property mortgages, sometimes, it can be dependent on whether they are a C corporation, an S corporation, an independent trust. All those things,
Affect the
we
value?
don't know what's
Does it affect the
all
value?
involved. No, I'm saying mortgage. If you're talking mortgage, there's many things that can be added into their mortgage that we are not seeing. I'm taking the individual property on Main Street and saying this is retail space. It's 3,600 square feet. I am saying that my data, which is sufficient amount of data provided to me within the town, is telling me that it will yield $18 a square foot at 10% vacancy and 35% expenses. And I'm just throwing numbers out there. I then support that rental rate the vacancy rate, the expense rate, including the cap rate, which is your rate of return on your investment that is verified through calling banks and making sure that my cap rate that I'm applying to this property is in fact correct. I then take it one step further and take outside sources such as the MLS, such as LoopNet and CoStar, which is only commercial and industrial property. That is the only tools I have, which is a lot of tools. I will be honest with you, that 36% of non-returns, I understand what the reservation is. At the end of the day, the methodology is being applied across the board consistently, which is what I have to do in my role as an assessor. That's what I do.
Again, don't misunderstand me. I'm not looking to say that you're not doing things consistently. I
No,
believe
I
you
know
are.
that.
I just think the formula's skewed. But again, for another day between you and I, not necessarily in this forum. Yano, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Tyne.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to say,
You gotta introduce.
oh, I'm sorry, I'm Sebastian Tyne, Yano Tyne. I'm chairman of the Board of Assessors in North Reading. Excuse me. Pardon me, but
Would you prefer to sit? We could move a chair.
old age, no, this is okay.
Okay.
Old age has reached me at 81. I need the walker. Debbie is not saying that she values all the commercial industrial properties using the cost approach, even though she may have said that. She doesn't mean that. We use the income approach. We use the cost approach. We use market approach. We have to look at all three approaches to value. While the tax bill may go out using a cost value, everything is backed up with the income approach. You can't avoid that. If you go to the appellate tax board, everything has to be based on the income approach. That's what they're looking for. As far as sale price is concerned, you can't go by market value. I mean, you can't go by sale price, because nowadays people pay too much, too little. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Sometimes it's very hard to explain, or hard to understand why they pay this high a price or that low a price, for residential as well, but primarily with the commercial industrial. So we do use the income approach. I mean, that's why she's talking rental rates. And that's why she's saying that while we only get 60% of the returns, we don't go simply on that basis. We look at some of the services that are out there that give us rental rates. To be honest with you, Steve, I think that if more people gave the information on the income and expense, because most of the commercial properties in town are small businesses. If they gave the information, they might get a better break than what they're getting. That's my opinion.
I don't necessarily disagree, but again, I don't know what makes up that 111 that didn't respond.
Well,
Yeah.
we don't know either. I mean, unless we actually look at it.
Yeah.
And that's a question that I think
Right, later on, yeah.
it's been asked, and we couldn't have it tonight.
Right, yep, I'm good.
Can we get to the, oh, I'm sorry, Michael.
And one last point I wanted to make, and I know I don't have the mic with me, but I think my voice carries. That has nothing to do with the classification here.
That's correct.
This has been one of my sticking points since I got on the board, this whole income and expense. As you know, Deb, I've tortured you with this. When I got on the board in 2010, it was around 25.
Education is beautiful.
The income and expense form acceptance was around 25%. So we've come a long way.
Yes.
But I am full agreement with Steve on this, and this has been my big pet peeve with this whole income expense issue is the commercial property owners need to step up and deliver this information, because I'm in full agreement. I think you're undervaluing that 111 people. I do. I think it's an issue. And because every time I hear a homeowner and they call me and they lose their job or they have struggles in their life, there's nothing we do for them. You know, this whole process is so skewed, and I've never liked it. Why can't we go across the board assess value, like everybody?
We do. That's what I've been trying to say. The
That's what she's
same
done.
methodology. And I'm just gonna throw addresses, places out there. 111 Main Street submits an I&E, their retail. 109 Main Street, retail, similar size, locations the same, doesn't submit the retail, the I&E. The same methodology is applied to the one that did not submit it.
But it's not the same process you use to evaluate mine,
Your
my
your
personal
house-
property, my house.
Well, we do use the cost. Their tax bills are issued on cost. It is supported as well as mandated to, that cost value has to be within 15% of that income value. My hands are tied with that. There's really nothing else I can do. In the perfect world, I wish I could get that percent up to 82, 100 would be perfect. But you know what? I have residential homeowners out there that don't return their sales information. I knock on their door, I leave them notices, they don't call me. So it's the scenario around the entire town, and you know what, as unique as we think we are, that is 351 communities. I serve on the board in Middleton, we go through the same thing. You know, back in the day, I do just want to back up the bus real quick on this I&E information. Prior to the acts of 2000, 1988, the Department of Revenue used to say, unless your commercial, industrial, and personal property was greater than 30% of your levy, you couldn't shift. That was simple. Now, 1988 comes around, they implement Chapter 200, and now we have this shift scenario. The shift scenario comes from the values. So,
I'm good.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, before you go into, close the hearing, we're going to have some
I
dialogue.
closed the hearing. This is a
Dialogue
board
with this
discussion
board-
at
board
this
discussion.
point.
Oh,
Right now.
okay, then I
That's
have
it.
some questions.
We allowed a member of the assessors to
Okay,
address.
okay, I didn't hear you
Yeah, okay.
close the meeting, so I do have something that I want to say. In trying to come to my decision, again, I was a little bit confused by what I was looking at as presented and versus what my tax bill was. But I did want to say, I think one of the frustrations that is within the community overall, I did a 10-year study. I went from 2006 to the present. And this will fit into what Mr. Barrett said. We've had a 54% tax rate increase from 2006 to 2016. That basically equates to 5.4% every year. And a lot of people, if they would listen in and participate more, they would get to understand that it's not just a 2.5% tax levy that we look at as presented by the assessor. That people don't necessarily grasp. They think the taxes will only go up 2.5% every year. They think we're restricted to that. And I think that's the frustration, is when you look at something that 10 years, 54% increase in the tax rate. That weighs heavy on a lot of people in town. So I'm glad to hear that the rate's going down this year. I didn't pick up on that, and I apologize for that, but
I think that one of the things we tend to lose sight of is the fact that the tax rate is made up of two elements. One is related to the levy limit as it increases each year, and the other is related to any override dollars that we're paying for exempt debt. Right. So if you're going to look at things, maybe we ought to go back a few years and take a look at the split to get some better feel of what's going on.
Yeah.
So, and then there's another factor is that on an individual basis, on any given year, right, the tax rate doesn't change, as we've set the tax rate, but the tax bill for someone at a particular location could go up more than
right.
what we've raised, percentage-wise, what we've raised the tax rate. And somewhere else, their property value has dropped off, and that's related to the market, as our assessor explained.
That's what we've had in the last few years, is when we had, through this little recession that we went through, the higher-end value homes, values dropped. So again, as the assessed valuations went up for the smaller homes. I mean, for a home, a small little ranch that was worth, $257,000  8 years ago, is now worth $423,000. All of a sudden, exponentially, it's increased 50%. Whereas someone's home who was $800,000 or more, has remained static. So as the shifts changed and the valuations changed, a larger portion of the increase in taxes actually is being borne by the property values that are lower. So again, the assessed valuation just went up, probably
4%.
4%.
Yeah.
So,
and there is, in fact,
we're up to
it
500,000,
was
but it wasn't that long
presented,
ago.
it was presented this evening. I'm not sure we're prepared to make that kind of a decision, but we can make an adjustment for those low-value homes. We can put them in a category and shift some of that burden off of them onto the higher assessed homes. I'm not suggesting that we do that at this point, but we could have a classification of one between commercial and home, and we can make an adjustment for the lower valued homes so that they pay a little less than what they would be assessed for.
But all it's going to do is shift to the other residential properties,
Right.
the higher valued residential properties.
Right, and we would be shifting it to the higher residential
Income
properties.
distribution, is that what that sounds like to me?
Yeah, but again, if you recall the discussion about the high school, middle school project, 25 years straight line for the average home in that particular year, which was probably around $460,000, was going to be $1,000 a year. Flat increase for the average home for 25 years, which is, built into our tax rate right now, as you pointed out. Yeah, so if you take out the exempt debt, and then you can see what the real cost of operating is here is in relation to,
And the reason why the tax rate went down
is because the valuations went up. That's all.
Which is
well,
the
no,
issue.
I think we retired some
They
exempt debt.
retired some
Well,
debt.
but assessed values went up.
So
They did. They
the
went up.
exempt debt
Yeah, but the levy limit, it
that we
doesn't
have on
matter.
the books.
Doesn't matter if assessed values go up. Assessed values could double, right? The
Yeah,
tax
yeah,
rate
right.
would come in half,
Right.
because the levy limit says this is all you can raise.
Right, you can only get a raise X number of dollars. So how much fell
Unless
off,
you
Liz?
override.
138, but right now we have 6.2 million of exempt debt, which contributes to $2.25, $2.25. That's what it adds to the tax rate, based upon our valuation.
In the cost of borrowing, right? In the cost of borrowing, yeah.
Right.
Okay, further discussion amongst the board. If not, I'll ask our clerk to read motion number 1.
Well,
Or it's actually motion number 2.
I don't, it doesn't, if I might, it doesn't sound to me like there's any appetite to do that shift for residential? What about the shift for small commercial? Because that was another thing.
The impact on that, what was it, a handful?
56
56.
properties.
56 properties total, and it's very small. We've
It's
looked
the
at that
same,
over the years.
it's the same difference, so it's gonna shift it to the,
I think those two, in my opinion, those, if we're gonna consider something like that, we need to look at distributions, and we need to look at a little history before we jump and move down that path.
I just need to know so I know what kind of a motion to
Oh,
make on
okay.
it, so.
You- Oh, you didn't say that.
I can make my own, but I
So
was
the-
hoping
I'm in
to
favor of a
Generally
single.
make sure that she
Generally
was.
what happens is we do this for an hour and a half to 2 hours, and we just stay the same.
Right. So I think,
that's
I
what I
think
was
the
thinking.
consensus on the board is to maintain,
All right,
maintain the
Single tax rate.
so CIP.
classification factor of 1. So it's
So no.
number,
Yeah,
number
Gotcha.
4.
all right, we're done, ready? Mr. Chairman, I move to establish a tax classification factor of 1 as recommended by the Board of Assessors.
Second.
And
Second.
Second by Mr. Yule. Mr. Prisco, discussion.
Just, I wanted to say one more time how important this economic development is to try to get some control over this as well. And I'm really proud of this board, the commitment we made to this. I think we're heading in the right direction. Deb, I hope that we make your job very difficult in the next few years associated with CIP. We want a massive
More
growth.
difficult. Excuse me, more difficult.
You know what? The
In a good
thing
way.
is that actually makes it easier. The numbers are the numbers.
Right. So we're fully committed to that, and I know the taxpayers in this town are really feeling the pinch. We know it. We know it. And that is our real only major solution that we have in front of us. So I'm voting in favor of this.
Okay, on the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Next one.
So, Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend the FY 2016 property tax levy at,
No, I think, let's see, I move to establish a residential commercial exemption.
Two
Yeah, I think you're
You
right.
still need to back up to
Sorry about
open
that, yep.
space and then the exemptions.
I move not to establish a residential exemption.
Second.
I took them out of order, I'm sorry.
No
Did I
problem.
hear a second?
I second.
Second by Mr. Yule. Further discussion?
Yeah.
Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Next.
Mr. Chairman, I move not to establish a commercial exemption.
Second.
Second by Mr. Yule. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend the FY 2016 property tax levy at 45 million.
Now, I think do we have to do this?
Open space, you still have to take a vote even though we don't have it. You're right. Yeah.
We vote no, right?
Oh, man.
Yes.
Is that what it is?
No.
We don't
Sorry.
have it.
Wait a minute,
I
haven't,
move not
where
to.
is that one?
I don't think we gave
I
you that
think I
motion.
can-
We don't have that one.
But can we create it?
You can read it the same way you read the residential exemption, just put in place of open space.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move not to establish an open space exemption.
Second.
Discount.
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 Excuse me.
Discount.
Open space discount.
Discount.
See, you ended up creating.
Second by
your
Mr.
own
Yule.
anyway.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
How about now? Are we ready now?
No. Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend the FY property tax levy at, which is,
45,817.
do we have a number for the?
She does, Mr.
Less
Chairman.
than 11?
It's right here.
The clerk
We have
has it,
it.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
We have it. It's right. She has it. It's right there.
okay.
45,817, 464, 22 cents, which is 12,424, 78 less, 78 cents less than the levy limit.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Yule, second by Mr. Yule. Discussion.
Just to let
Yeah.
people know, we're leaving some money on the table.
All in favor?
There you go. We left some money on the table.
All
Use
in,
ca-
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we have,
And you realize that's
Chairman, I
four
move to
all vote, right?
recommend the Board of Assessors that the fiscal tax rate be set at.
Wait, once, was that okay, the way that it's read? Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So
16,
there's a total levy, which is less than an amount. You've read that, right? You have that? Okay. Next one is to recommend to the Board of Assessors that the FY 2016 tax rate be set at what they recommended, I guess.
$16.41 per 1,000 evaluation.
Okay,
upon
go hear a
certification.
second.
Second,
Second by Mr. Yule. Discussion.
yeah, if I
Yeah.
may, I mean, it's good to see a rate go down. It's a very small amount, but it's good to see a rate go down. And I think, to Mr. Barrett's point, I think, if I understood him correctly, what he may have been trying to saying to us, at least how I looked at it, was as we manage our town services and cover our expenses, that we do what we can to keep our costs below that 2.5% levy, so that we can come almost every year and be able to give some form of a reduction in the rate. So instead of managing the town at 2.5%, because we have 2.5%, to do that, try to manage it at 2%. I basically mentioned this last year as well. If we can manage our costs at 2% versus the 2.5% levy, then we'd be going in the right direction, if
Still
it's
up.
possible. Is that,
Still up.
what? What's still?
If you're gonna spend 2% more than you did
No,
last
no.
year, it's still up.
No, well,
Yeah.
assuming costs will go up, but we don't have to manage it to the maximum every year, I
Yeah,
guess.
we just left
That's-
$12,000
That's
out
the point. but-
So Mr. Yule, we are engaged now in the FY 2017 budget process, right? And we have a revenue plan. In fact, we're working on putting together a 3-year revenue plan.
Right.
And we can look at some scenarios, and we can have that discussion here at a board meeting associated with what if we decide that we are only going to increase the levy limit next year by 2% instead of 2.5%, or whatever,
Right,
right? We can have that discussion,
that would be. a
and
very
then we
good
can make a
discussion.
decision as to what we want to do, based on
Yeah, what the impact
what our
is.
needs
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's worth the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, I think there's, let's see,
One more, right?
one more.
Oh, wait, we haven't voted yet. We just made the motion.
Okay, oh, that's
All in
right.
favor, right.
On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Mr. Chairman, I move to
He can't vote on
establish
any of
I
these.
voted off.
commercial exemption?
That's an extra motion.
What?
That was an extra
That's
motion.
extra
I think that was
motion.
supposed to be.
Yeah, I
open
think we're all
space.
set.
Before we leave, I'm gonna have you guys all sign the LA7. This is what goes into Gateway. Last year, we didn't do it. In prior years, I did. But then it was crazy last year when
Chasing
we were
people
trying
around,
to
right.
get the tax rate submitted.
Right.
Oh,
So
I thought you were
I'm just
gonna-
gonna walk
I
it
thought you had-
around.
I thought you were coming up
This
to
is-
waive our taxes for being
Right.
selectmen.
So we're,
Well,
right
at
here?
least some
Yep,
treats.
you just sign here and date here. So I'm just gonna walk it around,
I
let you
keep
guys
telling my
sign
neighbors
it,
if they
and
keep
then
voting
we
for me,
can
the assessed
submit
valuation
that
goes down in the
tomorrow.
neighborhood because the
You'll
values
still
of,
have to
You didn't
log
vote on
into
it.
Gateway.
what's
He
that?
can't, he can't.
On which one?
He's recused.
No, I voted on everything. I can vote today.
You
I can vote.
did, that's
I
that's
can-
what you
But
said.
why do you accuse yourself?
While you're
No,
walking
I
it
did in the
around.
past. I did not have to this year.
I just want
Oh,
to
that's
comment
Rate.
Yeah.
He gets-
on
he gets-
the
he gets to
single
do
rate.
it- oh, because it's a-
work that you
Once
did
it's a single
in the
rate.
presentation and
Yeah, great.
Thank
the
you.
information that was provided. I think it helped a lot in answering questions. And it's a whole difficult question about how we value our commercial and industrial property. I know I left scratching my head, and then this afternoon we met for a while and we talked more about it. Became a little more clear about that the job of the assessor and the amount of effort that has to be put in to actually go through and value, especially the commercial property, you know, is a major effort. And I want to thank you and the team for the job that was done and the presentation.
The
this evening.
presentation, I had a
Well,
lot
I
of
know,
help with it.
I know Liz had a lot of help, but
It was a
you
team
made the
effort.
presentation.
Thank you.
And thank you, Liz.
Was I too loud, Bob?
No, you were perfect.
Yeah, really clear, really helpful, that was great.
Thank you.
That was one of the things this afternoon. I said, you gotta speak up. And you did it. You did it. 100%.
I have my notes right.
Thank you for answering all those emails and questions.
Well,
It's helpful.
Bring in your
Thank
percentage.
you kindly.
Okay.
Right, he's not voting. Can I need that.
Those that are in our audience, thank you.
Thank you, the
We
chamber,
would
for coming.
encourage you to stay if you'd like. Do it my,
We're at the little school, but we're gonna bypass the berry stuff.
okay, the next item on our agenda is,
502. You know what, I know that number, but I don't know what it is.
on our agenda, we were gonna review and sign the land disposition agreement for J.T. Berry and Lowell Road, and due to some additional back and forth with the State House, we're not gonna do that this evening. We're not prepared. So, little school roof, review the status, Mr. Gilberto?
Mr. Chairman, I know Selectman Yule was present for the meeting and made comments to the board, which we included in the packet, but I'll start in terms of the discussion. Roughly 10 days ago, we had a meeting hosted by the superintendent of schools where we reviewed a matrix of different options with regard to what could be done for replacement of the roof at the little school. And there were 4 options that were identified. They were all different types of materials that could be used on the roof. There was probably an hour-long discussion that took place with regard to the advantages and disadvantages of each of those options. One of the things that was a recurring factor was the fact that while one of the options posed a cost savings opportunity for the town, at the same time there was concern with regard to how durable that surface would be. That, combined with the fact that that roof needs to be accessed for ongoing maintenance purposes and has at times been accessed in unauthorized ways, led to there being a good amount of concern at the table. And at the end of the discussion, the conclusion was that the consensus recommendation to the selectmen and to the school committee would be to proceed with the original recommendation of Hacks Engineering as presented by Hacks and the project manager to the 3 boards when they met here in room 14 in October, which is an SBS roof replacement. We've got documentation in the packet as well with regard to the statement of the designer concerning the replacement of the roof. And if the board members have not had the opportunity to review it, I'll just refer to the recommendations by Hacks. If you bear with me just one moment. So again, as the commitment was made by the board at the town meeting, we've asked for an opinion with regard to the option for making a repair to the roof. And I'm reading from the recommendation. Based on the age of the roof system, roof areas A and B, that reached the end of its serviceable life, overall poor condition, previous number of repairs, extensive reported leaks, and findings detailed above, Hacks does not recommend to continue repairing the existing roofs A and B, due to the fact that the repairs will only extend the roof life for a few years, and the current problem will only be postponed to a near future. The roof repair approach is cheaper than the cost of a roof replacement. However, it will be only a temporary solution to the current roof condition, and ultimately, in the near future, the North Reading School District will have to face the complete roof replacement. And it goes on to recommend the SBS system, modified bitumen roofing system for the little school roof areas A and B. And with that, I'd be glad to the extent that I can, answer any questions. I indicated that the reference was consensus. I think if we tally the numbers, that there were 10 people in the room, and 9 in the room were in agreement that this was the way that the town was best advised to proceed. And there was one, I guess, a minority report, if you will, with regard to this.
I have just 2 comments. One is related in round numbers, is that with the estimate that town meeting approved, which was the proposal to do the complete job per the recommendation of the consultant, was that the cost of the town was in the roughly $900,000 range. And I think we got quote to just have a roof repair in the $475,000 range for both
Closer to 6.
C and D, or
The number I recall at the meeting was $500,000.
it was in that range, anyway. And there was a caveat with respect to that, and that was that, you know, they hadn't done any surveying of the roof, basically. Or they hadn't done any scanning of the roof, looking for wet spots. So I think the comments on that quote that the school department had gotten was that, you know, they would recommend to do an infrared study on the roof, and there would be additional cost associated with
For C&D.
replacing insulation. And then, when I looked at the report of the consultant that was hired through the MSBA, there were additional, in that cost, there were repairs to brick structure in a few spots. There was, you know, potential issues around drains and things. So it seems to me that by the time you take the 475 or 450, whatever the number is, and you add a whole bunch of other things that really should be done, you still don't have a complete brand-new roof. And you're getting close to the $900,000 cost that the town will have to put up to do the full job. So, you know, I think it's the right thing to do. Now, the question about, you know, the type of the roof, you know, I guess I've heard a few things that say, well, you know, you're better off with this kind of roof versus what they propose, so on and so forth. Now, that's probably where some of that, at least one individual not happy with the approach. I think because we have to protect ourselves, we only have so much money to spend. That's what we've approved at town meeting. We should make sure that when we go out to bid, that there is an alternative for one of the lower cost roofs in there, just in case the bids come in above, so we can continue on with the project. I don't really see us going back to town meeting and saying, oh, wait a minute, we need an extra amount of money. So I would hope that when that proposal is put out, that there are some alternatives in there that would allow us legally to proceed with the project if the cost came up and above the high-end roof that is being recommended.
That is something that was identified as an option, to perform the extra analysis and effort for design for a secondary option will bring with it additional cost to the town, because we would now be specifying a bid package for another material. It's something that could be done, but I think we need to be aware of the cost of doing so as well.
Why would they be, they're looking for a specific bid package with a specific
That's correct.
product?
We're required to show a design to the MSB as to what we intend to submit for reimbursement when we send the application.
And you can't submit it with an alternate?
I think the issue is, the short answer is the MSBA does not want to see the town do that. The longer answer is, if we do that, then there is additional associated design work for creating the bid package that does bring with it a cost. And that's something we need to be mindful of when working within the budget.
Michael?
So what was the number we finalized at town meeting? I forgot.
922, 923.
Yeah, that's the town share.
That's the town share.
The town share is not.
1.7 million.
Right, 1.7.
Okay.
It's the total cost.
So what's presented in here as estimates for the SBS is 1.4 million?
That's correct. That's the hard construction cost, and the difference is made up by soft costs, designer services, project management.
Project management.
As well as contingency.
So that's for A and B building,
Correct.
nothing on C and D.
Well, I believe that the entrance and the overhang area that's got damage is in C.
So that's part of this.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you.
Okay.
Was there a discussion about including C and D now for our 500 grand?
He's not ready.
Okay, well, I've heard different things, so I'm just trying to get clarification.
D is an older roof.
Here's the,
but
there's
it's
the new
newer than
addition that was
anything
put
else
on.
on the building. All right.
So this is just for
We're replacing.
A and B with a small little area in C.
We're
for 1.4
replacing
million.
the original school roof versus the roof on the addition.
But it also includes changing all the sockets and raising things to fit
Yeah,
the new insulation according to current building codes, et cetera.
it makes sense. I'm reading it all, I don't know.
Well, I mean, the other problem that we had is there were 4 possibilities, and one of them did not have, had a 15-year warranty, okay? And it's only been used in industry for 15 years. So you don't know if you're gonna really go 20, 25 years with it. So that seemed a wee bit of a gamble. It was also the same roof that basically uses it's like a rubber roof, only it's not rubber. And the principal of the little school was at this meeting, and she had a lot to say about the number of kids after hours that are up there skateboarding and doing this and doing that. And when you use that kind of a roof, you are, although it's easier to patch, it's easier to damage.
Well, there's nothing in here that says anything about 15 years. Everything in here says 20-year warranty.
15 to 20, whatever. The bottom line is that the third column over, I'm sorry that I don't have, or the
Yeah.
last column over, has only really been used for the last 15 or 20 years.
Right, and that's not what's being recommended.
No, the second column in, I think.
So part of the recommendations related to, the durability of people walking on the roof and things. And, when I was on the school committee back in the late 70s, we had on that particular roof, someone with a small mini motorbike riding around on it. And we've had kids on this roof here that were on YouTube showing them walking on the roof and then jumping off. They were posting it on YouTube a couple of years ago, so I guess as much as you think it shouldn't happen, it happens. Mr. Yule and then Mr.
Yeah, I sent all of you a bullet breakdown of the meeting with the superintendent, and everybody played a part in the meeting. And I don't know if anybody had a chance to look at that or not. The purpose of the roof from the very beginning was to stop all the leakage and fix the roof in a way that no further damage would occur. And to the credit of the superintendent, saw an opportunity to go to the SBA. And so here we are with this $1.7 million project at a cost to the town of nearly $1 million. If the purpose is to stop the leaks on the roof, and if the foundation and structure is pretty good, according to the review, then we're not talking about repairing a roof, we're talking about a roof over. A roof over is completely different than a repair of a roof. You have a little hole in the roof, you repair the roof. And I don't want the misconception to be that a roof over is a repair, even though technically it falls under that category. A roof over covers the whole roof, prevents all the leaks, and prevents all future damage. It comes with a warranty of 15 years, and the new roof would come with a warranty of 20 years. And yet, we're still not doing the entire structure. We're leaving out D, and D's waiting in the wings another 10 years. I guess the concern that I have, we just went through a tax rate change, and now we have adding a cost to those to the taxes of the tune of $1 million, or nearly $1 million over a period of time. when we could do the same thing, accomplish the same thing, for about $500,000. And again, I want to clarify, it's a roof over, it's not a repair, even though it falls underneath that category because of the in-depth work that they're looking at doing with the, bringing it up to code as the SBA feels is necessary. So when I look at this, when I look at my own home, I look at the best and most efficient way that I can effectively repair things around my home. And then when I look at the school system, school buildings or old structures here, I look at what's the most cost-effective and most efficient way to do that. And I don't think enough attention has been put in the roof-over approach to save this town nearly $500,000. I just don't think the attention is in there. I think the report that we got, that the TA read, the advantage to that, for them writing that in the report in the way that they did, is to their advantage, not necessarily to the town's advantage. Because they have no reason to recommend a roof over, because the money's just not there. So that's the big concern that I have. I mean, we just went over, I just described how taxes have gone up 54% over 10 years. This is an opportunity to have a roof done for pretty much half the price. We're doing a lot of things with the Economic Development Committee. We may have, and with the MWRA, we need to be able to start pushing out some of these costs so that when the commercial base starts to increase, we start to have more money to do these things. And if we're talking 15 years, in 15 years, we could have accomplished quite a bit. We've accomplished a lot in the past 5 years. We can accomplish much more. And if the commercial base increases, then that takes the burden off a lot of the homeowners or taxpayers today. So that's why I think that the roof over is a better approach from an overall perspective in going down the road 15 years, 10 or 15 years, whatever the case might be.
Mr. Gilberto?
Just a point of clarification, it's the areas in question to be done are roof A, roof B, and roof D, the skylight, which is repairing the skylight to prevent water infiltration and repairing the existing skylight deteriorated seams and flashing at the base of the standing seam roof panels. Just a clarification in case it comes up.
Thank you.
Hey, Jeff, when I heard the number had gone from the 475 for the two roofs, I think it was 2 something for one roof, I don't know, I remember whether it was A or B. It's kind of a hard pill to swallow, but after reading the report and looking at the photographs that were taken associated with the repairs and trying to understand the philosophy of MSBA, I think their view is if you can repair something and get 25 years life out of it, North Reading's going to not come back and bang on the door to build a new school. I think that's how they're approaching a lot of this repair stuff. Do it right and extend the life of the building, period.
But, that
So-
impacts the taxpayers a lot.
It's what it amounts to in terms of the impact on the budget. It's about a $90,000 a year debt service, and it means that we're not going to have that amount of money. 66% the school isn't going to have to spend on something, and the town is not going to have $34,000 in any one budget year over the life of the bond to spend. So we tighten our belts so we don't do something. It's not an override. It's not going to impact the taxpayer from the point of view of a higher tax rate. It may impact a service, hopefully not, but it may impact the service. So I think that's where we are. I think, I'll get to you in a second. I think that one of the issues that we face with anything in a municipality has to do with the building. It's gonna cost 30-40% more than what it'd be done on the outside. And that's exclusive of hiring the project manager and also, you know, putting a bid package and going out to bid where, you know, if it was your house, you could pick your vendor, get a couple of quotes, and although it's a much smaller project, right, it gets done for percentage-wise a lot less than the way we have to do business. And it's a problem, and it bothers me every time we get into one of these things, that it costs us so much more to get what someone on the outside could get done for the same cost, for a lot less. I mean, the same project for a lot less. Catherine, you were gonna...
I thought we actually did speak at length about that, and that's why is there something in the, I may have missed it, but was there some sort of actual, because we never had any estimates on that, and I thought we did talk about the fact that was still a substantial amount for a roof over to be done, and we would still have to be required to fix it according to the same code sort of
No,
modification.
that wasn't
No.
clear, that was not clear. That we had.
But if you
Is
want
that
the
clear now,
reimbursement-
though?
If you want the
Is
reimbursement, you have to do different things as far as bringing it up the code is concerned. But if you don't go for the reimbursement, then you have greater flexibility. You're just putting a roof.
It's repair versus new.
It's repair versus new, that's right.
So if we're repairing it, status quo generally could be okay.
Right.
New means upgrading and meeting the codes and the insulation and all
Lifting
that.
off the
And
top
I
and
get
stuff.
that, but I thought we talked about that because we didn't have any actual analysis or figures, or where did the figure of what you're saying it cost come from? Did you get some sort of a report on it? Or?
Well, when we discussed about that estimate was thrown up in the conversation, I'm assuming you're talking about when we had the FinCom and the school committee here. Is that the meeting that you're referring to?
Right.
Right. So I think that number was discussed, $500,000 was discussed at that meeting.
But that there is nothing in what I saw that actually substantiates or supports that number, so we would be opting to.
Well, I think the superintendent did get a somewhat of a quote on that, and he did, I believe he did mention, but I can be corrected on that. I think,
They did get a quote
Oh,
to
I
do
didn't
the
see
repair
that.
to the roof,
Yeah.
and it was quoted in two pieces. One piece was and that's the one that ended up in the paper, I think it was $225,000. Is that the one you published in an article? And
He doesn't read his own stuff.
you should.
He just writes it.
I'm sorry, Bob, I didn't want to put you on the spot,
I
but,
can't remember past last week.
you know.
You should subscribe
Anyway,
to
it
the
was,
transcript.
it was somewhere between $225,000 and $275,000. And to do the two pieces, because one is older than the other, or one needs
Right,
more
right.
repair than the other, it came up to, I'm thinking it was $425 to $475, somewhere in there. I don't remember the exact number.
But
Right.
that's only
But then
going to
there
be
was-
a temporary
That-
resolve.
No, that was like putting doing a repair to the roof, They basically
Get another
But
either
it's a-
cover the
You
old,
have to
10 or 15
go
years.
with
cover the roof,
money
or,
down the line, though.
Well, 15-year warranty. It comes with a 15-year warranty. In essence, if you.
but it did not include repairing some of the brickwork. It did not include replacing insulation that we know is wet. Because in that quote, they recommended doing a scan, and they said that there probably would have to be some insulation that was repaired that was not in the quote. So that quote's gonna, if you do it right, you should have them do the scan, and that quote is probably gonna rise as a result of it. But it's over a certain amount of money, which means that we have to go out to bid. So in order for the town to go out to bid, we have to pay to have someone put a spec together, and yada, yada. The cost gets up, and as it gets closer to the $900,000,
Oh,
right? You have to look at it from the point of view
500,000? No.
that for $900,000, because the state's gonna pick up 46 or 7% of it, let's go with the state. Done.
Yeah, no, I mean, we committed to taking a look at it, and I'll agree with somewhat of a cursory review of some alternatives here in relation to repairing or a roof over as opposed to taking the state's money and spending $900,000. And again, my recollection was, and as I was doing the calculations and thinking the same thing, this doesn't include this, doesn't include that, and a whole lot of other things, I'm saying, okay, now we're up to $600,000, and we've got a roof over, say, with a 10 to 15-year lifespan, as opposed to we're doing the whole thing differently, bringing it up to code, new insulation, everything that they're requiring us to do. So you've got a $1.7 million project that you're paying $900,000 for, and you got to get 20 to 25 years out of it. And I understand where you're coming from. Well, if we can, buy 10 to 15 years for $500,000 or $600,000, as opposed to spending $900 and getting 20 to 25, maybe we should do that from a cash flow standpoint and consider it. But yeah, based on the budgets, and again, when I look at my own repairs of my own home, yeah, sometimes you have to weigh those sorts of things. But to me, it's you've got a $1.7 million project here in front of us to do it to today's standards, and the state's kicking in over, $700,000 of it. So to me, $900,000 versus $600,000, I say go with the 20 to 25-year roof, new standards, new codes, and again, and take care of these other repairs that are also already addressed in the proposal. So, but I understand where you're coming from, and I don't,
Mr. Belvin,
I don't think it's.
would you mind if I put you on the spot and ask you your opinion on this?
Go right ahead.
If you wouldn't mind coming to the podium real quick? Because I know you had looked into this and you have a little bit of background on this.
Yeah.
And what your recommendation would be?
Bill Belvin, 323 Haverhill Street. So I kind of brought up the original kind of roof overlay, just to give options out there, because there are definitely options out there compared to spending the 1.9 million. The other option too is, what if the state doesn't give you the funding? Where do we go from there? So looking at these options now, getting all the information, I agree with Mr. O'Leary after looking at everything, spending an extra couple of $100,000 to put a brand new roof on for 25 years, it's definitely worth it. But I also see Mr. Yule's point is it is a big burden on taxpayers. So, look at it from both sides, and I know you guys would probably make the best decision.
Say, hold your nose and,
Yeah.
But, okay.
Michael?
So when they do this new roof with this new standards, there's got to be some efficiency gains that we make in the school as well, right? Where there could potentially be some savings?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, you still got windows that are probably inefficient, so I mean, you're gonna lose a lot. But yeah, you're getting yourself closer to that point of, or at least your top's sealed up a little tighter.
And you have more insulation. Yes, Jeff?
Yeah. Would you not get the same result with a roof over and keeping the structure dry beneath it? And as long as the, for the life of the warranty, wouldn't you get that same, if the purpose is to stop leakage and to keep the building dry, and insulation does dry, by the way, over time it does dry, and it'll be okay, as long as it doesn't continually get wet. And I know that from personal experience in my house.
The problem, I'm gonna stop you there for a second. One of the issues is mold.
Yeah, it's huge.
You check my house out there, she said most of the walls and insulation is that.
It's wet.
From personal experience, I had had a pipe leak, killed out got all the insulation soaked, and I just took it from that point on. Once I stopped the leak, I let it all air out, dry out, and it was done. So my insulation works fine. But all I'm saying is that doesn't it accomplish the same thing, a roof over accomplish the same thing as the new roof?
So I work in building management, and that's common practice. Is we do basically it's a secondary roof system, which is a brand new roof on top of your old roof, which is going to give you your tight seal, and I've actually even gotten 25-year warranties paying a little extra. So you are correct, it is a complete brand new roof on top, but if you do have wet insulation, you always cut it out and put, replace it with some fresh insulation, just for the fact that you could run into some of them M-word issues.
Well, I spoke my piece.
got lucky.
and
Ms.
that's that.
Minipelli?
Well, I was just curious, do you, because I didn't see the superintendent's, the whatever evaluation he got. Do you have a sense of what the cost factor of that would be, or, I mean?
Yeah, I actually threw that number up before. I did a similar size roof, union labor, and it was about $500,000. And that was replacing a little insulation, not too much, but. I mean, it should be an avenue that should be looked at least.
Yeah.
What's the next steps? Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
What's the next steps? What are we,
Mr. Gilberto?
Next step would be to submit an application to the MSBA for them to review at their December meeting. I believe it's their December meeting, maybe their January meeting.
It has to be submitted in December for review in January, but it has to be submitted
This week,
now.
yeah.
so we have to vote tonight?
I don't believe it requires a vote. It was more just for purposes of having the discussion and closing the loop with a public
Town meetings
dialogue.
approved the
Yeah, we already said.
total.
I had made a commitment that, prior to it being submitted and it potentially coming back to me to sign a contract with MSBA at some point in the process to review it in a public setting. And that was the intention of doing this, so that I could provide guidance back to the school department to make the submission. And they've held the submission pending this discussion and a similar discussion going on at the school committee meeting this evening.
And part of what's driving this is a very short timeline.
That's why it was a town meeting.
Good.
That's why we
If
put
you
it
want to have the
to,
roof done during the summer when the kids are not there.
yeah.
And it's a fast track program that SBA came up with, and this is not one of these, take a few years, think about it. This is deliberately set up as a fast track program. We would not be able to push it out another year if we wanted to have this approval and their 47%, whatever it is, reimbursement.
Submitting the application, literally, the school.
Okay. We through discussing it, we're moving ahead. Is that the consensus of the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move to endorse the town administrator move forward on this proposed project.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Minipelli. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Make a note, 4-1, Mr. Yule is in opposition. Anyone here for public comment?
Sufficiently driven them away.
Minutes of October 28th executive session, Mrs. Minipelli.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the October 28, 2015 executive session minutes as written.
Do we hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bill, for your
Second.
time on this.
Second by Mr. O'Leary. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. We also have minutes of November 2nd regular session meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the November 2nd regular session minutes as written.
Do we
Second.
hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. O'Leary. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. We also have the executive session November 2nd. Ms. Minipelli?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the November 2nd executive session minutes as written.
Second.
Second by Mr. O'Leary. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that covers it. Vehicle use policy, Mr. Roberto.
Mr. Chairman, this is the second and final reading prior to implementation of the vehicle use policy. The policy is intended to streamline and to create uniformity in the deployment of vehicles to town employees, excluding the police and fire departments. intended to address issues such as the way that we provide compensation to employees for the use of their personal vehicle for town business. It's intended to provide some uniformity in the way we deploy town-owned vehicles to town personnel. And it's intended to establish reasonable regulations with regard to the use of town-owned vehicles or with regard to the use of private personal vehicles for town business in the interest of protecting both our employees, the town as an entity, and the taxpayers moving forward. The policy as written is very similar to the policy as proposed in the first reading earlier this year. The proposed implementation date to the board is January 1st, 2016. And it will, with that implementation, we may need to make a couple of adjustments with regard to a couple of departmental budgets at the June town meeting to further account for the implementation on January 1st as opposed to July 1st. But I don't expect that will be a significant cost. Again, we'll be looking to implement effective January 1st.
Discussion, anybody? Have a motion to,
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Yule?
Yeah, I just want to thank the TA for working as diligently as he has on that requirement. He put a lot of time and effort into it, and it's going to be, I believe, very beneficial to the town that we go forth with his proposal. Thank you.
Mrs. Manpelli?
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the second reading of the vehicle use policy.
Second.
Second by Mr. O'Leary.
No, Mr. Yule. He seconded
I
it.
second.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Yule. Sorry.
You guys are starting to sound alike.
I know. Well, he had a mustache a couple weeks ago. He shaved it off,
It's
too.
gone.
We know.
Okay, on the motion, further discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Okay, we have legal bills for September.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve legal bills for September 2015 in the amount of $12,841.73 as follows. Copeland and Page PC General, $10,285.73. Copeland and Page PC Labor, $1,584. Copeland and Page PC JT Berry, $972 for a total of $12,841.73.
Second. I said second.
Second by Mr. Yule. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Town Administrator's report.
I believe there's another motion for payment of legal bills.
Yes, just one. Mr. Chairman, I move to approve legal bills for
Oh,
Furman Gregory Deptula through October 31st,
Okay.
2015.
right, sorry.
As
Forgot about
follows.
that.
Invoice number 11286 in the amount of $70,709.50. Invoice number 11295 in the amount of $11,273 for a total of $28,982.50.
Second.
Second by Mr. O'Leary. Any
I
discussion?
believe
at
there's
this
an
point?
additional line to the motion.
Oh, and further to authorize payment of a $35,000 retainer fee.
Yeah, I seconded that, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought I heard
I
you say
did,
that.
that was
Yeah.
Okay, that's all in one motion.
There was
right?
all one motion.
Okay. On the motion, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Now Town Administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of notes for the board and for the community. The police department has deployed the use of tasers effective November 6th. As the community is aware and the board is aware, these were funded in the FY 2016 budget process. There was a discussion that took place at a budget hearing in February with the police chief. The Executive Office of Public Safety has signed off on the department's regulations. Officers have completed training, and tasers will be deployed in conjunction with the department's policy. Have been deployed in conjunction with the Department of Policy, I should say. Second, the Assistant Library Director, Judy Seeger, has announced her intention to retire in January. The Library Director, in conjunction with the Human Resources Administrator, has advertised the position, and interviews are underway. We thank Judy for her years of service, and I'll keep the board apprised of any recognition that may be scheduled in the coming weeks. Thirdly, under the oversight of the finance director and in conjunction with the town's auditor, we've completed an internal review of workers' compensation with the intention of streamlining implementation of the benefit for our employees. Attached, please find a copy of the auditor's report and recommendations, which we will be implementing in conjunction with the finance department and human resources. And finally, on Friday, November 13th, representatives of the Attorney General's Abandoned Housing Initiative came to Town Hall to present an overview of the program. Representatives of the inspectional and financial departments attended. The program is free to the town and is a tool that we will be considering as a remedy to address vacant or abandoned properties owned by unresponsive or non-compliant parties. And I have attached a copy of an overview of the program. This is an interesting program that the Attorney General has started that allows us the opportunity to address properties that otherwise are not in compliance and have no clear path to compliance with the assistance of the state. And other than the charge associated with our own town staff putting together the case, the Attorney General's office takes care of the action. So I hope to see, while the examples are few, where there are issues of code and building violations, that this would be a tool for implementation.
So this is different than receivership?
No, this is a receivership program.
This is,
run
and
by
this
the
is
Attorney
for
General's
residents only, not commercial?
It's primarily for residential properties. They're certainly willing to look at commercial properties, but it may be that commercial properties, they may not fit. It depends on the situation. They often are mixed use when the Attorney General is taking on those properties. But not out of the question, but I'm not optimistic that they will fit in either.
Mr. Chairman?
I should also note that we're continuing to look at other options with town council with regard to the commercial properties.
Mr. Yule?
Now, if the, under this scenario, if the property has been abandoned but it's in the possession of the bank, how would this help?
It's tailored almost exclusively for that instance where there is no responsive owner to be held accountable. Certainly there may be instances where the owner is not complying and we need to use this as a tool, but more often than not it is bank ownership that leads to this as a tool that gets pursued by cities and towns.
So this might be able to help us out at
That's absolutely. I think that that's priority number one.
Right. Thank you.
Ms. Minko?
I would want to know what properties and what is going to be subject to this sort of, enforcement activity first before we would say yes to them going ahead with things like that. Are they already on board and?
We don't have an agreement with
Yeah.
the Attorney General's office. The way we've been told, again, this was as of the introductory meeting on Friday, we prepare the case, so to speak, or the history of a particular property, provide it to them, and they make a determination as to whether they can pursue receivership as an option for it. That's the way it's been presented to us.
I'm pretty
So it
familiar
takes-
with what they do,
Mhm.
just from the scope of my work. But I would want us to do what we can here, working with the homeowner first and working with the property owner first before we send it to the Attorney General's office, sending out a letter to a homeowner on our behalf,
I think that if you look at the case, that the few homes that would be under consideration, there's a documented history of non-responsiveness from a homeowner, or in other cases, that's bank ownership, similarly non-responsive. But I'd be happy to vet the properties with the board.
Yeah.
We've actually done that in the past.
To the Attorney General
No,
receivership?
We went and helped someone who was way back in taxes. I don't remember the address or whatever.
We've even taken property and then given it back
Right, we've done that.
as a result of, maybe relatives finally stepping up and
Right. So we've done
deciding that
that.
the property value was worth more than, it was worth paying off the taxes.
So we have reached
But
out.
I think if I understand it correctly, we're really fully controlled, because unless we release a package to them and ask them to do something, nothing happens, right?
That's correct.
I
It's
just
not
want
like
to make
they
sure
just
of
come in
that,
to town and
right.
decide, so.
Well, of course, right.
Right.
Do we have some sort of an abandoned property listing or itemization already? Are we having a registration for these properties to, you know, pay a fee and give us their contact person and things like that in place here?
I think that the answer is in the negative to all of the questions.
We should do something like that.
Well, I would think the assessor has a long list of properties that, shouldn't say
Track
long, a
vacancies.
list of properties that have liens against them.
Right.
And then there are probably some that, in that list is a subset that we're talking about, I would guess.
I can't imagine there's a lot.
I think that the candidly, the housing market kind of prevents it or discourages it from happening because of the real estate value. It just, you don't see it to the magnitude that you see it in some communities, in my experience. But, you know, certainly, there's no interest on the part of town hall staff to pursue this, to make life difficult for a resident. This is almost exclusively for somebody who is intentionally non-compliant. But I certainly understand the concern that we don't want to be out there bullying, property owners.
I'm not saying that's what they do. I'm saying we should take an approach that is like that, working with a property owner first before we send something to Attorney General enforcement and receivership proceedings and litigation. I just think we might maybe devise something here of an enforcement process or, listing or, there's a bunch of cities that have abandoned house or abandoned property or vacant property listings, things like that, that we could consider doing that as well. If there's an issue with the property, that we have, some sort of a list or a registration process and an annual, provide us with your contact information, ownership information, if there's some sort of an issue with a piece of property,
There may be tracking of the properties themselves on the part of the fire department when they make the designation as to what level of access that they'll have. That's the only thing I can immediately think of that we're currently doing, but in terms of the registration programs that you see in some other communities, we do not have that in place at this point in time.
Just an idea.
Anything else, Michael?
No, thank you.
Mr. O'Leary?
Again, I just think that we should mention, what occurred in Paris, that tragic and senseless terrorist attacks that took place. And I want to applaud the French government's efforts in going after ISIS. They're good for them. And I'm glad we're an ally, and I'm glad our government's standing by them. But terribly senseless, and there's already been threats now for ISIS in Washington, D.C., so we all have to be alert and vigilant. And it's a strange world we live in these days. But again, thoughts and prayers to the people of Paris and for our leaders and leaders of sensible countries, to do the right thing and try and eliminate this scourge. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Yule?
I concur, Steve. It is a horrible environment that we live in right now internationally. Relatively speaking, it's been a little bit safer here, but unfortunately that could change any day. So my thoughts and my prayers watching that on TV is definitely with the French people and all that have been maimed, have been killed, and the terror that that whole country is under right now is it's hard to imagine, even though I know we went through it in 2000. Now they're going through it. Who's next? So I'm very concerned about that. So my prayers are out to the French. We had a meeting Thursday night, I believe it was, with residents directly affected by the Kinder Morgan pipeline. And it was a very rewarding meeting, we let them know the perspective of the board, and to let them know that our first responsibility is the sovereignty of North Reading and the protection of property rights. And we will do what we can within the limits that we have. They filled out forms, and there's some more forms coming back in, and they asked a lot of questions, and when they left, they were, felt a lot more comfortable about how to go about the process. We helped them with the intervening process. We recommended that that they don't allow people on their property. That's what's out there, and that's the recommendation by the Northeast Municipal Gas Pipeline Coalition. We let them know what, how much we have been involved, and I think that at the end of it, at the end of the night, what they did was they now have a way to communicate with one another and to see how they can go through the intervening process and work with one another in such a way that they can move forward. Okay, and you've done a good job when they applaud you at the end of this. They applauded the TA for his work and his efforts.
I meant to ask you what the attendance was in terms of.
There's 14
14,
property
yeah.
owners,
14.
probably representing 7 or 8 properties. Out of about 28 properties.
Right.
So 50% roughly?
No, lower than that,
25.
more like 25%.
More like 25%. And I did I got an email today, and I'll pass that on to you, from another property owner that's impacted by it. So, they can now, begin to become more familiar with what they have to do. So,
Very good.
and that's it.
Anything else? Ms. Mantella?
Just a few things, and I agree with my fellow selectmen that what we witnessed again is something really horrific, tragic, and it's keeps you up at night watching these type of things, and you hope that people have more empathy and compassion than what's being exhibited here. But there's been a lot of outpouring, I think, of sympathy and empathy that's been beautiful, despite the completely tragic and horrific stuff that went on. So our thoughts and our prayers are with everybody there, and people here have, we've seen the stories about people in the U.S. that have, that have victims here, but we're all impacted by it, no matter how you look at it. So that's, I just echo my fellow colleagues' sentiments on that. And I also wanted to say something, maybe to shift the mood. The girls' varsity soccer high school team.
Yep.
Were you going to mention this one?
No, that's okay. Yeah, good. Go.
She beat you to it, Michael.
No,
You
I'm
can
good.
talk about that one.
No,
That
go,
was a
tell
real
'em.
positive, and congratulate them. I heard all about how exciting that Bishop Fenwick game was.
That was
And
really
then
good.
maybe the other thing, I don't know if you wanted to talk about this, we did just to update on the NORCAM. We had that informal meeting,
Okay.
which I think was quite productive in terms of sort of, maybe we weren't aware of all the facts that had transpired there, so we sort of set up a game plan of, looking at the different rooms at the high school. We learned that NORCAM actually has acquired cameras, as it said that it was gonna do, to make the investment that it said it was gonna do. But they need to then, take a look at what was actually in place there and what needs to be put in place there. So we had a pretty good meeting of the minds, I think, in terms of moving that forward in a good direction. You know, you can comment more on that if you wanted to, but that's about it.
I will.
Just to help you out with the, a little more information on the girls, on the ladies. It wasn't an exciting game, I was there. And they do play again on Wednesday night, so I wish them the best. So they won the North, and now they're gonna go for, the regionals, I believe it is, or, yes, the regionals. So, is it regional? Yes.
Good news.
So anyways, Wednesday night, I hope people can make it. I believe it's at 5 o'clock.
Is it at home?
No, it's at, they have a neutral field, which is in Lynn, Manning Bowl. Just this whole issue that happened over in Paris, and I'm sure you got the letter that I'd like to see the flags at half-mast, as the president has asked, until, I believe, the close of business Thursday. So I would like to see everybody across town do that. And I think that's the best way to honor these victims. And it is saddened that it's now become more of a political subject rather than a real serious subject that we got to come to a solution. I mean, what I used to do for a living, we used to deal with this subject a lot, and I know a lot of the guys I worked with are out there right now. This is a serious issue. This isn't a debatable on public TV to get ratings. This is an issue that has to be addressed for our children. You know, we have to continue to be able to go to the malls and go to the movie theaters and live our lives. And the only way we do that is by making the right investments for our security. And, you know, it's people like Jane's son who's out there fighting this fight every day, and all the other soldiers. And to make this a political subject, it's just driving me crazy. This is a serious issue. This is coming. It's coming right here to our back door. So I hope our legislation and all the voters out there just, you know, force this into the right decision makers and let them work this out, but it shouldn't be debated on TV for ratings. And I'll leave it at that. So I appreciate the flags getting done. The last thing I had was the Christmas season is upon us, and the young adults at the high school are putting on their annual play, and this year actually doing it earlier. It's going to be December 4th and 5th and December 11th and 12th, and they're doing a Christmas story. And I think it's a great way to get everybody into the holiday spirits. So, wonderful thing. You can buy the tickets online. Very simple. I ordered all my tickets online. It's www.ticketstage.com. And you can pick out your seat. You know, it's the nice thing with the auditorium now. The Performance Arts Center has assigned seating, so you don't have to worry about running there to get the best seat. You have an assigned seat.
Do they charge more for certain seating?
No, no. It's first come, first serve.
All seats are the
So
same.
get online, order the tickets, bring your family. The kids have worked so hard in such a short period of time to pull this play off, so it would be nice for us to show them our
It's
appreciation.
gonna be a
by-
couple of matinees, which is too.
Yes.
Time-wise.
Yep.
Good for
Very good.
seniors
Very good.
and families, you know, to get the
Yep.
kids out.
So, and that's it. That's all I have.
So, just to follow up to what Kate said, we did meet with Rob.
Rob?
And John. I guess he's the president of the board. And it was a private meeting. We had, I thought, a healthy discussion. Michael was following up to get NORCAM permission to go on site in the gymnasium where there's some conduit, but what's in the conduit or where it goes and terminates, et cetera, needed to be inspected. And hopefully, as a result of, if it's positive or whatever has to be done, we'll work it out and maybe at a minimum get the hammer in the gymnasium. Tomorrow evening, Thursday evening at 7 o'clock is the NORCAM board meeting. Are you able to attend?
Oh, yeah, right, that, yeah.
This is a reminder.
Right.
7 o'clock, right, Rob?
Yep.
Yeah. So I plan on being there, and I'm hoping that you could make it too. While we're on meetings, December, our normal meeting days would have been the 7th and the 21st, and I think, looking at the calendar and everything, that sort of fits. There was mention of maybe needing a separate meeting, or a special meeting for something. Was that you, Michael, that mentioned it to me?
It was, I did mention it during our executive session discussion
Yeah.
associated with the J.T. Berry.
Yeah.
If we get all the documentation and everything prepared.
We might need to have
and
a
we
meeting to sign it.
If we have the opportunity to get it posted, and do it that week the first week in December, that first, second, third, or fourth of December, around that range, great. If not, we can wait for the 7th, and if for some reason we get past the 7th.
48 hours notice,
Yeah.
and we do it like, what, on a Wednesday or Thursday?
Whatever, all I'm asking is the board to be somewhat flexible over the first 2 weeks in December. Because even if we miss the 7th of December, we have to get it done that week.
Yeah.
Because after that, obviously, a lot of holiday breaks. And we are just so close to getting this over. We're on the 1 yard line. We're dotting the i's and crossing the t's. And so I just ask the board to be flexible.
So
If I may,
next,
if I may, do we have to meet as a group to sign?
We do,
Because do we have to vote on it?
yes.
To vote to approve the land disposition agreement, to accept the deed, and to authorize the chairman to take such actions as required.
Right.
Can we do that tonight?
No.
No, not at this time.
They don't have it right.
No, you have all the documentation, everyone has it.
I thought you
Review
were
it. Any comments, or if you have any comments, please get them to us right away, but you have everything, so,
Yeah, me if
no,
you-
we
I
have to,
know.
we have to wait till,
I know you are, I know.
we're through the
so,
process.
someone mentioned Christmas coming upon us, but actually Thanksgiving is next week.
Right.
Which, yeah, we figured you would say that Thanksgiving Day
Well,
prayer tonight.
well, thank you, Mike. So I want to wish all our board members a happy Thanksgiving, and all of our town staff and everyone in the community for that matter. I think the entire board has been invited to the senior Thanksgiving dinner on Sunday. I don't know who's planning on coming, but
I'll
I
be
would
there.
suggest
I'll
if
be
you
escorting
can
my
come.
mother.
What?
I will be escorting my mother there.
Oh, I'm glad to hear she's able to come, Steve.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about
Yeah.
that.
He looks forward to
Are
it.
you attending?
What time is it?
Catherine, you
It's
probably
in
haven't,
here.
you
1:45.
being a new board member, probably have not been to.
12, doors open
But it's,
12:45, 1:30 dinner.
It's really a treat.
It is. Do we know,
The seniors arrive at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
No, no,
10:30, 10:30.
10:30.
what time do we need to be there? Because we
12,
usually do a post.
12:45.
Sometimes they
Doors
take
open
some
12:45.
pictures, so
Right.
maybe at 12:30 or so.
12:30, 12:45.
12:45
Dinner's
in that
1:30.
timeframe, yeah.
You can bring your husband too.
The board sits at the head table, so.
Yeah.
You have to just let
you
Brad-
can-
Excellent
I mean,
meeting.
Mike, if you plan to attend, I'm assuming Representative Jones, somebody reached out to you, just to confirm your
Probably got an
attendance.
invitation.
Yeah,
Email
Yeah, sure
from
they
his
did.
daughter,
Email.
actually.
yeah.
I'll check.
Just let them know, if you're
Yeah.
gonna attend, that'd be
Yeah.
great. They just need to know for the seating
Yeah,
chart.
I think we talked about this before, but I don't remember seeing an email. I think I put it in because you mentioned it at the last
Okay.
meeting. So we have 7th and 21st as our scheduled
That's correct.
Monday meetings. And then
Let's make sure I have that, yeah.
7 and 21, those will be our regular meetings. And then
Whatever.
Christmas is on that Friday, the following Friday.
So I just wanted to ask, so Mike, you think maybe sometime in between there,
Well,
we
I
might
don't,
need to get together too?
I mean, I'm assuming at this point it's gonna be the 7th, probably the most likely.
Depends on our
What's that?
conference. It depends on our community next
Correct.
time.
But if there's a chance to do it
Okay.
sooner, and we can get this over to the Registry of Deeds, then I would just ask for some flexibility. And we're literally talking, hoping us maybe only 15, 20 minutes to get you in, you
Well,
know.
I mean, I think the entire board is in support of it, and all we need is a majority vote.
That's what's the
So if somebody can't make it, unless you object, I would schedule a meeting as long as we had a majority.
So, yeah,
And it
that's
would be very short. It's a matter of taking a vote and signing a document. Actually, I signed the document. So.
We have to vote you to sign the
Yeah.
document.
I think there are a couple that the board
So why don't we just vote them
When I
aside
looked at the
then?
package, I think there were a couple that the board
We-
signs in its entirety.
We all sign the LDA.
Yeah.
Correct.
Oh,
Bob
okay.
signs, we have to give him the authorization to sign the deed.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
They would like to get everybody's
Of
signature on the
course, That's a
LDA.
big deal, and that's,
So the
Yeah.
7th and the 21st. Do we have to meet on the 21st?
We'll decide that on the 7th, I guess.
Isn't that when you have
I
your,
I suspect we're gonna have to meet.
isn't that when you have your board Christmas meeting party?
You're the chair.
Yeah, we do, very good.
I told my wife she had to have the
Holiday.
Christmas cookies done that weekend, right?
Ah.
Well,
Holiday.
Okay.
Yeah, several of you have already mentioned, what happened in France, and it's kind of ironic because I have satellite radio in my car, and I normally listen to music when I'm driving around. For some reason, I clicked on one of the news channels, and it was right about when this whole thing was erupting, And I was thinking back, I was on my way to my partner's house, this is 2001, when I had the radio on. I was on my way up to their house. This is when we were first getting the business going, and we had a meeting scheduled, and that's when they announced that a plane had hit one of the towers. And at the time, it could have well been an accident. And I'm going through my head and I'm saying, because they didn't even, they were talking about a small plane, they were talking about all kinds of things early on. And I got to the house and I said to Bill, turn on the TV. And that's when, they actually caught the picture of the second plane coming in. Just, you think about what's going on in this world today, and saying something's got to be done about it. But, my condolences to the French nation for their losses, and we've actually lost a U.S. citizen and probably several of I haven't seen an injured list, but it's pretty sad, especially this time, at any time of the year, especially this time of the year. So
No,
with
it's
that,
close to home, because, one of my wife's colleagues from her law office is 2 blocks away in Paris at another restaurant.
But it's
You know,
funny
the
that you
president
said
announced all flags be flown at half-mast. It's already been brought out until Thursday, so.
It's funny you said that though, because when I was watching the news as it was happening too, and it just evoked such a visceral response. I thought the same thing, 9/11 and of course the Boston Marathon bombing. It's just stunning that people could have done that, but hopefully people have that awareness, that situational awareness they're talking
Pretty sad.
about.
With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by
I'll
Mr.
second that.
Second by Mr. O'Leary, or motion by Mr.
Yeah, I
O'Leary.
think you
Second
Good night.
second by Mr. Frisco.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's getting late.